Good evening. Today is Monday, September 9th, 2019, 7 p.m. This is the Norton Charter Commission's meeting. I am calling to order. If we could stand to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Before we get started, is anybody other than Shane taping this meeting? Great. We do have an agenda, and to respect everybody who's come to visit us their time this evening, we're going to rearrange it, and we're going to start off with the interviews. So if we could have the town clerk and the Board of Registrars come up. Thank you very much, ladies, for coming. I'm going to move this back so I can see you. Again, thank you for coming. I think what we'll do is start off with the questions for the Board of Registrars as a whole, and we'll let the three of you folks head out, and then we'll keep Lucia behind and grill her a little bit more after we're done. Again, wanted to thank you very much for coming. We appreciate your time. We know it's after hours and you have things to do, but we do very much appreciate your time and your input. So thank you for coming to visit with us. Why don't we just start with a very brief explanation of the responsibility of the Board of Registrars as a whole.
Can we do introductions?
I'm sorry, that'd be my apologies. If you could also introduce yourselves.
My name is Dorothy McCormick, and I've been on the board of registrars since the early 1990s. Essentially, our job is to ensure that people have the ability to register to vote and participate in all of the elections and town meetings.
And your name?
Dorothy Freeman.
Thank you. Just for the record, thank you. And you?
I can't remember when I was appointed, but reading through this book that I had on, you cannot hold two positions. You can't be like a school committee and be a registrar. So I was a selectman for a while.
Okay.
But I wasn't a registrar. But I got to know a lot of people. And in the, just to add what Dottie said, in the winter, we work on the census. And it's a lot of paperwork. And we have it really has to be up to date for the elections. And I would say we're 99% sure that it is. Once, I'm a Republican registrar.
Okay. And you are seated according, yeah, and,
Democratic registrar.
okay.
I actually was appointed about a year or so ago. I haven't had any duties. Lucia hasn't really needed my help, but she's assured me that coming this winter, after the winter, she'll need me for the primary and for the upcoming presidential election.
Okay. If you could explain a little bit, I know you mentioned that one of you is the Republican representative and one is the Democrat. Can you explain how you are seated and how that works with regards to your political affiliations?
We are appointed by the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
The state requires your registrars, you have to have people from all parties, so you have to have Democrat, Republican, Independent.
Okay.
Okay, we have, I believe, 2 Democrats, 1 Republican, and I'm also a registrar on the Independent.
Got it. Thank you. Are you happy with the way your board is appointed?
Well, it was my understanding that the Republican town committees listening to the, and the Democratic because listening to the selectmen and then
Okay.
And if I may
Sure.
reiterate on that also, the only committee active right now is the Democratic Party committee, and that's how I got Miriam.
Okay.
The Republican committee is nowhere to be found. There doesn't seem to be anybody who is running it. I've spoken to the state a couple of times, and the name they have, that person is no longer, so I have no idea where they are. I don't know. I'm just basically, I think what I'm waiting for is next year, because your Republican and Democratic committee members are going to be on the ballot, so that's probably exactly what I'm going to find out. All right, because they do take out papers, but that's all state. They take out nomination papers, but that only goes through the state. We don't see that as town clerks. We do not see that.
Okay. Are you happy with the number of members on your board?
That is the amount we have to have.
Right.
Which we're
And you're,
exceeding.
there's enough work for everybody to do, and there's not, you don't? Okay.
And again, I'll open my mouth, and if I
That's
can
okay.
say is that we have a very low budget on our registrars. It's a very low budget. When they do come in to help, they get paid. My department can handle the census. We are in control of everything that's going on, and when we need the help, we call in the registrars. The registrars play more important roles with your cities and large towns that have the election commissions. But where our department, just on a regular year, can handle the census and the inputting of that and all the other duties responsible. Next year, it's a big year, which I'm sure you know, and they are going to be kept very busy. They will be in helping us.
Okay.
Yeah. But
Do you-
it's a small town, so,
Do you meet on a periodic basis?
no.
Okay, as needed?
So it's just like a per diem, for instance, of when you need, you can, do you have to, can you make that decision on your own, or is that a decision that needs to be?
No, I make that on my own.
Okay.
I call them and, yeah.
I went through my paperwork there, and I found the registrar's information, and this, it'd probably be a good idea at some point, if you just went through it, just saw what the different things that the registrars do. It's, all of this is really controlled by the state, it's not, nothing that the town really understands. But I believe that the registrars are also in charge of the election, and
A recount, yes, yes. The first ones, if there was ever a recount, they cannot participate in elections due to the possibility of a recount. If there is a recount there and here and there, it's basically their responsibility with town council and also me. But that's it.
Okay. And so Lucia, you would be considered the staff for the Board of Registrars?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And the calculations show that replace it with ellipticals that are proposed, and box vote.
Do you feel you have enough guidance or support from the town?
We have our guidance and support from Yes, we do.
Do you feel that you have everything you need, access to everything you need in order to do your jobs well? Have you noted any trends or changes to regulations in your industry that are potentially impacting your roles going forward?
In the future, you're talking about same-day voter registration. So you go, day of an election, you can walk in and register and vote. That would be a major change in how we do our job.
Do you ever meet with the Board of Registrars of any other town to meet periodically, compare notes? Is there any association of any kind? No. Okay.
So that creates a wide open air situation. Lots of reasons of light, as well as the width of these
Thinking about your positions on the Board of Registrar,
main criteria.
and also as a potential constituent, what do you like about the town's form of government? If you want to take those in order.
culverts for the two 12-inch streams, and we actually advised
You know, Norton's town government, in my opinion, government is every person in this town.
last time we were here, we did
This town government. And hopefully we can, with changes, encourage more and more people to participate at different levels, different boards, committees, volunteer, different organizations, to bring people together.
if on the cost.
Dottie?
Well,
Item
years ago when I first got involved, it was pretty easy to get involved, whether you were man or woman, because it was legal voters and the JCs.
Put those costs
And
over.
by our bylaws, the legal voters, they had different representatives to different committees all around the town hall. So it was great. And then at the end of the month, we would make a report to our members. So
Raising that.
I feel that I got a lot of experience out of that, a lot of knowledge, where I am faithful to watching all the committees here, and I think, they don't know that. Because it was kind of built into us when we were, you know, having the meetings, and I enjoyed that. I know times have changed, and people just don't have the time for another commitment, but it was a great way forward for us, and it was really involved.
So the town had a J.C.'s, the town formerly had a J.C.'s group here?
Yes, yes, very active.
How long ago did that disband?
The seventies.
Okay.
We could look at it and say that they're years ago.
Okay. Miriam?
I don't have, very much experience, I just know that that's, the Democratic Town Committee is committed to getting more people involved, registering people and getting people involved in town government.
Okay. Are there things that you don't like about Norton Town's government?
Frank from the water department, provide his input. One thing we did add to the plans was that
I would like just to
any
see
installation.
more diversity, new faces.
Area for, even though we are providing that cover, it's still a little tight.
I guess I can't disagree with Dory. But then, if the person has been on the board for years and then is not reelected, well, that's not such a bad thing, because you get new ideas.
Mhm.
And people are going to question how the government is run and what they're doing, so,
It would all happen.
I was beating all that for 6 years, that wasn't such a bad thing.
No future political aspirations?
I mean-
No future political aspirations?
I could write a book about the town.
I would read that book.
I also was on the planning board.
Okay.
I had read it for about 6 years after I was a selectman.
Okay.
I might be able to help them. I like that a lot better than I like the selectmen, because the little pretty cut and dry.
Okay.
And I was really eager to do that, but selectmen is kind of, well, and he's not here.
Not tonight. Miriam, is there anything about Norton's town government you don't care for?
I feel we don't have that.
No, I go to the town meetings and, I try to keep up on what's going on in the town. Very glad to see, your commission working, and look forward to seeing what findings you have.
Scott.
Are there any changes in town government that you would like to see specifically?
Stamp set of plans, two copies.
Yes.
There are, I guess, a few appointed officials in the town, and I've heard several fairly knowledgeable people say that they feel if they were elected, it would be, a benefit for the town.
Okay.
That's
Are you willing to be specific about which positions those are?
on the water commission.
Okay.
We might have to watch it.
Dottie, how about you? Any changes that you would like to see? Either Dottie?
No, I'd like, I could see taking away some of the appointing authority, and if the position were such that we could find some people to run. That's the problem. I mean, how many times have we had elections in this town? And there's a position and a blank. So it goes both ways. You always have, you know, all you need is a few votes and you have the wrong person.
Right.
Well, I was, when I first was elected, they went from 3 to 5 members. And I think that was good, we had better diversity with just the 3 of them. And I was the first one elected before the vote about the
Wow, that was back in 1980.
The historian has arrived. You had made reference to this manual. Is this something that's put out by the state?
Yes,
Is it available online?
I'll email you.
Okay, that would be great, if you don't mind. I appreciate that. That would be very helpful. Does anybody from the commission have any other specific questions? Is there anything that we didn't ask you that you wanted to bring up this evening? All right. If there's no further questions, we'll keep Lucia, like I said, and we very much appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming in. All right, Lucia, we'll probably skip over some of the duplicate questions. Lucia brought us a handout of the duties of the town's clerk's office. Thank you very much. That's very helpful. And for the most part, we know a lot about what you do on a day-to-day basis. We've just met your board. We talked about how you work together. Are you happy with the way your board is appointed?
Yes, I did. To be honest with you, I don't think if I didn't have these three that anybody else would be interested.
Okay.
I put it out there. I put it out Miriam's term. She goes to Florida, so she's gone in the winter. So when the terms expire after 3 years, then I have to put it out there to the Democrat and Republican town committees.
Mhm.
And like I said, there's no Republican town committee. Excuse me, I put it on the website for registrars. I've had a couple, but it clashes with the other parties. You can't have too many of the same party.
Understood.
So I'm fortunate with Dottie and Dottie. I'm very fortunate because they're always willing to keep going.
Okay. All right, and you'd prefer to see them stay as appointed as opposed to elected?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely, yeah.
All right, and you report to Mike Units. Are you happy with the level of control that you have with your job?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you feel you have enough oversight and guidance when needed?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think you have everything you need, whether it be people or technology, information that you need to do your job well?
I have a part-timer starting tomorrow, actually.
Yeah.
The position has been empty. And I have to say that our computers, we're still on Windows 7, and what's happening is we're getting upgrades on DOS and boards and commissions on the software programs we have, and they're just not falling compatible with Windows 7, and it's just obsolete. I personally have Windows 10, but the other 3 computers in there are very much outdated.
Whole other procedure. Don't want to say anything else.
Is there any association of town clerks within Massachusetts?
Yes, we have the Mass Town Clerks Association.
Okay.
And we have full conferences a year, we actually have one next week. And we have the IIMC, the International Town Clerks, that's all over the world, actually.
Okay.
Got notified after 5 p.m.
So judging from that, I'm assuming you meet with colleagues fairly often.
Oh,
Are-
yes.
Are there any trends or regulations in the field that you're seeing as impacting your job or the position overall?
Just elections, as Dottie mentioned, same day, voter registration. When that comes, the state had better make it, that could create a whole lot of problems. Also, they're going into this, I believe it's going to be on next year's ballot, on this rank voting, where you're going to rank the candidates. In all honesty, I'm not that sure about that, but it will be at the conference next, there's a class on that next week at the conference. But the same day voter registration is very scary. And also what they're doing is people now can register at the Registry of Motor Vehicles. And what we're running into, that's been a few years now, and what we run into is that information, we work off a state system also. We have two systems, the town system and the state system. And that's all electronically sent overnight from the RMV if anybody registers, and we run into duplicates. And now what they're going to do is they're going to start allowing people who are on Mass Health, they're going to automatically register them to vote unless they say they don't want it. So that's going to be, it's just, the state is making town clerks' positions miserable.
Lucia, what's your staff right now? So you have,
I have an assistant full-time and I have a part-time
Okay.
starting tomorrow.
With the new hire of the part-time, would you view your department as fully staffed, or could you still use help?
I have Brooke and I are a great team, and we're hard workers, and we manage the department. It's good. A part-time, yes, it's gonna be great, because it'll ease it up a little bit. And next year, most definitely, I could use probably next year 4 full-time people every year it's gonna be, but we'll get through, we're good, you know, we work.
Do you ever find any,
Yes, I was just going to ask a follow-up question. Please. Would the additional staffing that you alluded to help you with some of these state mandates that are coming down? Would the additional staffing help you with these state mandates? You know, what would help you with all of these changes that the state
Well,
seems to
as
be
they come
imposing?
through, it's hard to say right now until they come through
Yeah.
and what our laws are, what we have to do and what we're required and what we can't do. So it's really going to depend as they come through, as far as staffing it. And I would bring my registrars in, if they're, most definitely bring them in if they're required, and just have to go up on my budget to pay them. But as far as like with the rank voting and same-day voter registration, yeah, I'm gonna need more help, but it's not a permanent thing. In the last presidential, I used my poll workers to help, and I actually was at Wheaton last week to recruit students from Wheaton to come in and help and, you know, put in some of their community service. And, but I just kind of will worry about that as it gets closer and see what the needs are.
Next question?
please?
The registrars, the 4 of you, is that 4 of you, and I think you answered this, but just to clarify for me, is that the 4 of you because the state says there needs to be 4, or could you have more, but you can only get 4?
No, it's based on how many people, how many residents
Okay.
in town.
So 4 is the
Yeah,
only
so
number you're
4,
gonna,
so us
okay.
4 are it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
In your travels, and again, I don't know how much autonomy you have over this, have you seen any towns that are doing anything different with the town clerk's department or role?
No, we all basically, we all do the same, everything. We do have rules, regulations, and
Sure,
laws.
it's responsive to the
So
state.
we're all, we have the Mass Town Clerks, we have, with every town clerk in Massachusetts, we have an email that we're constantly, if we have any questions on anything, we're always emailing each other, and we all help, we're, each other, and we call the state, we have a help desk at the state, direct lines, and we also need be, we contact the state elections attorney in Boston, and so, but we're all under the same.
What do you like about Norton's town government?
I love everything about it. I love town government. It's exciting. Every day is different.
Is there anything you don't like about it?
I think what I don't like, and I can't really say I don't like it, I just kind of wish that a little something could be done with social media. I'm all for social media, but if it could be more controlled in some way, I don't know, instead of beating on somebody, maybe if they had an idea of what people do, I've often thought that maybe once a year, if we could have an open forum with all department heads for the residents, and we can explain what our responsibilities are, and if you need this, then contact me. I mean, I don't know if it would work or not, but it was an idea that I had. But I do know that something was out there about a census, as far as me, about a month or so ago, and I, very nicely, I knew, I went in there and corrected the person.
Yep.
And advised the person and guided the person and said, if it's still a problem, come and see me, we'll take care of it together, But I think sometimes it gets pretty brutal.
Yes. I won't argue with you there. Are there any changes to town government that you'd like to see?
As far as here, would love to see HR. We need HR, and I think Estelle put it great, is for the training and the mentoring and benefits-wise. As you know, the way the town hall is and the treasurer's office controls the benefits, there's no confidentiality at all, because you can just hear everything that is being said in both departments, actually. But I think that would really help tremendously. And they just got a part-time IT person. Hopefully that will help. That's really desperate need of IT.
The town hall has a part-term,
Yeah, Charlene's coming back.
Okay.
She just got posted last week.
okay.
Lucia, does that take things off your plate?
What's going to happen as far as that goes, she is going to be responsible for making updates on the website, but God love her, she's battled cancer and she's coming back from that, so she's got many doctor's appointments, so if she can't handle the website, then I will step in and do it.
Because you took that over when she left,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
Is she going to be assigned to your office, or she's going to be in her old role?
No, she's going to be here, and I believe just off the treasurer's office, there's a room in there, do you know what that room just, and they've set her up in there.
So it's a whole new position? It's an actual IT
Well, she used to
position?
work out of the police department.
Right.
Am I correct? I don't know.
Communications.
Yeah, communications, yeah, so
Okay.
she's being moved over here.
Okay.
It's part-time.
And just doing IT?
I think you better talk to Mike on that.
Okay.
I don't know if you can, I think,
Okay.
Not processing the time, she will be paying the bills, not processing.
Okay.
So she do IT, she will coordinate with your IT company, services that are needed for the whole town.
I was just curious if if it was an actual IT position. That's all.
So with
Part-time
that
IT.
hire, will you still have the part-time outsource?
oh, I don't know. We will, yes.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Lucia? virtually painless. We don't bite at all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lucia, for coming. We appreciate it. Thanks, you too. Hi, how are you? Come join us. Keith. Oh, thank you so much. Keith, you're back, or do you need to run again? Okay. All right. This is James Coelho. He is the town's accountant. He very nicely brought us a sheet with his accountant and auditor responsibilities, which is very helpful. Thank you very much. So going through, let's see. We've got a list of responsibilities. Can you just tell us a little bit about, do you have a staff? Is it just you?
So I have a full-time assistant.
Okay.
She basically does the payables. And I also have a part-time clerk that verifies the payroll and salary rates and benefits, vacation time, accrual.
Okay.
It's just three of us.
Just the three of you. And so I would imagine the town manager relies on you most heavily. You don't presently, do you consult with FinCom?
Okay, yeah, well, on a monthly basis, I submit reports to the finance committee.
Okay.
I give them a copy of the budget, what has been spent to date. I come to the meetings once in a while.
Okay.
Give to the finance committee.
Okay. And you report directly to Mike
Town
Units?
manager and the select board.
Okay. Oh, you're the position that the Board of Selectmen hire?
Exactly.
Okay. I just remembered that.
The town manager and my position are the ones that are, that's the way it is
Yep.
across the state.
So that's regulated by the state law?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Are you happy with the level of autonomy within your department? Okay. Do you feel you have the appropriate checks and balances within your department?
Yes, for the most part, yes, we do. If we had more staff,
Mm-hmm.
it would probably be better. We'd have more time to go through more auditing procedures to the different departments.
Yeah.
But just having myself and my assistant and the amount of bills that come into the town are just $50 million worth of bills. We can't be everywhere.
Understood.
I mean, for comparison, I used to work in North Attleboro before,
Mm-hmm.
and that office had 4 people, 4.5 people pretty much, and we only have 2.5. Compared to all the towns around, I think we are the only town that only has 2 full-time and a part-time for a town this size.
Okay.
And were you in the same position in
I
Attleboro?
was the
North Attleboro?
assistant town accountant in North Attleboro for 5.5 years. Before that, I worked at Town of Johnston, Rhode Island. They have a mayor.
How long have you been the accountant for Norton?
13 years.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Please.
Back to the
Yes.
Payables. Do you, who approves all the bills who approves them? for payment?
I do.
You,
Yes. All of the bills have to be checked for accuracy, make sure that they're legal and that there's enough money in the appropriation line. If everything checks out, basically my assistant keeps them in, she reviews them. If there's an issue, she comes to me, we contact the department that submitted the bill. If there's an issue with it, I try to resolve it. And eventually at the end, I have to sign off on the warrant. And that warrant goes to the town manager, who also signs off on it after reviewing it. And then that warrant goes to the selectmen, and they have to approve it. and then we release the checks to the treasurer.
Sure. I guess what I was asking James was, who approves it initially? So in other words, does the fire department approve their own invoice?
Every department approves their own bills. If they have a board or a committee, the committee has to sign off on the bill. There's a bill schedule that goes with the invoice to our office.
Right.
So the fire department, the fire chief, the police chief, sign off on it, and then we go from there. So every department is responsible
For their own, right?
for their own. Yeah.
So if they have a board, the board approves the bills. Is that the-
Usually designate a member of the board to also, to sign off.
Right.
They do a good job. They do find mistakes.
The boards do, or the?
Yes, they do.
James is the part.
We try not to find them, but they just pop up on it.
Right, right. So the boards approve the bills, is that like a state, that's a state requirement?
Yeah, they approve the bill for payment and submit it to us, and then I could still deny it if it's wrong.
Right.
Yes, you will.
Thank you.
So that's one area where sometimes getting signatures on bill schedules could be a problem. Some boards don't meet every week.
Right,
Right.
right.
That's one area where we sometimes have to wait. That's just part of it.
Is there any other way to do that, or is that just has to be mandated by the state?
Well, the State Modernization Act that passed in November of 2016, before you needed a majority of the board. Now they're allowing for the board to designate one member and then report back to the board at the next meeting on what they signed off. That made it a little easier. But, so you could have a member come in and sign, doesn't have to be during a meeting. Especially during the summertime, everybody's on vacation, sometimes it's hard to get a signature. And some of the bills, they're due by a certain date, so they gotta get paid.
Sure.
Do you find that most boards have taken advantage of that and have designated
Yes.
one person?
Is there a backup selected in the event that they're not available? Is there a backup person selected in case they're not available? Okay.
James, you pay the bills for the whole town, so including like the school department and the water department?
All of them, water and school. The school committee will sign off on the bills for the school, and we get a packet usually every other week.
Yeah.
We have to key them all into the system and pay them.
I got you.
The same with the water department.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Does the water department come from the commission, or does it come from the superintendent?
it comes from the water board, the water commission.
So the superintendent would submit that to the water board, and then they would submit it to
They
you?
have to get approved at their meeting, and then we get them. It's the same way, they have a time schedule, like, whenever there is a water meeting, or water commission meeting, we get bills the next day. So they have them all ready for the meetings, and then.
Yes.
Quick question, when you say you check them to make sure that the bills are all legal, aside from the obvious legality of them, are you checking them against the committee meetings, to make sure they voted on and appropriated them, or like, what is it you're looking for?
No, just to make sure that they serve a municipal purpose, if, for instance, the highway department is buying a truck, it has to be from an article that was approved for a truck. Also, sometimes people go on conferences, they buy food, alcohol is not legal during registry. So if they have alcohol at a dinner, that's not allowed. We don't pay Massachusetts sales tax. Sometimes some of the bills have sales tax on it, so we have to contact the department to make sure they get a new invoice that doesn't have tax exempt. For the most part, all department heads know what they're doing, and they rarely submit something that's not. I mean, what they do is usually misunderstanding, or for the most part, we don't have any issues with that.
Are you happy with the level of oversight and guidance?
Yes, most of the guidance I get is Department of Revenue from the state. So Matter of fact, the piece of paper I gave you with my job description comes straight from.
I saw
CMS.
Division of Local Service, yeah.
It's the same across the state.
Okay,
Every town accountant, town auditor, it's the same duties.
okay.
And we have an association, the Massachusetts Municipal Accountants and Auditors Association, where we go to seminars a couple of times a year and keep up with the new laws. That helps a lot.
Do you have access to everything that you need, information, technology? We talked a little bit about people already, that you need to do your job properly?
Yes. With the kind of money we have, I think I have enough, as far as technology. If we were a little bigger town and had more money, I would try to go for a more advanced accounting software system. But the maintenance on the more advanced system is costly, and it's just more money that we need for something else.
You probably know that as well as anybody. You talked about the association to which you belong. Are there any trends or changes in regulations that you're seeing that are going to impact your role or department going forward?
There is a rumor that there's going to be a new gas fee pronouncement coming out. The Governmental Accounting Standard Board issues guidance as to how financial statements need to be prepared for governments. And supposedly it's going to be a radical change from the ground up, and it's going to cost a lot of town accountants to retire. That's the word out there, but until it gets here and it gets closer, I really don't know how much of an impact it's going to have until I actually see what it's about.
Okay.
I think the next couple of years we're going to get more information on it.
Okay. In your prior positions within North Attleboro, and you said Johnston, Rhode Island, have you, or even just in meeting with colleagues at associations, have you come across any towns where your department or your function is structured differently?
Yeah, well, the city of Attleboro, they have a council form of government, so it's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
North Attleboro, when I was there, they had a RTN town meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Now they changed to town council
Okay.
recently.
Yep.
All
Are the
over the place.
are the accounting departments structured differently in either of those towns? Or is there any are there any towns out there that are doing anything differently that you might like to adopt?
Some towns have town accountant be the finance director,
Mm-hmm.
and they have more staff, so they can do that. And, as the finance director, you get to oversee both finance departments, treasurer, collector, assessors.
Is that something you would like to see in this town?
It's something that I'd like to see eventually.
Okay.
As we grow.
What's the benefit of that?
The benefit is that as the finance director, you have first-hand knowledge of what every other department is doing. You'll be in control of every department head within the finance department rather than have to go to the town manager.
Do you live in Norton?
No, I do not.
All right. Well, thinking about your position as the accountant, are there things that you like about Norton's town government?
I like everything pretty much. I don't have any real complaints, other than, politics lately have gotten a little heated. A lot of finger pointing between boards and departments. That's one thing I don't like. But town meeting, I don't mind it. If it was council form of government, I wouldn't mind that either. It'd actually probably make my job a little easier. I wouldn't have to wait for town meeting to get transfers approved. So it'll expedite things a little bit.
Can you expand a little bit on that, just to explain how that would work?
Well, right now, if, for instance, there's a shortfall in police department, and the fire department is gonna have an extra surplus of, say, 50,000 in this April. And we wanna transfer that money from fire to police. If it was a city council form of government, at their next meeting, we can just vote it or approve it. During the way we are right now, we have to go to town meeting. And we only have town meetings usually in May and October.
Twice a year.
And there is some leeway towards the end of the year. The state allows interdepartmental transfers during May and June to close out the year. There are some limitations and it's less flexibility.
So what happens in that gap period while you're waiting at the town meeting? Do they make changes in the police if they're running short? Or do you just run a shortage in that department?
Usually they, if it's an emergency and the finance committee reserve has money in it, we would ask the finance committee to fund it from the reserve account. It all depends on how much money we're talking about. You know, sometimes they have to just wait. Sometimes the bills don't get paid. You know, we tell the vendor, there's gonna be a town meeting in May, there's gonna be an article in there to appropriate the funds, and you will get paid right after that.
Are there late penalties?
We usually don't pay penalties.
Okay.
I mean, I shouldn't say all the time, but most of the times we don't pay.
Does that in any way impact our, for lack of a better word, credit going forward?
Not really. I mean, it's not often that it happens either.
Okay.
We always try to find the money within the budget. And usually, if we're talking about, say, highway department or police, in April, we may know that they're gonna be short, say, 70,000 by the end of the year, by June. So we could still pay stuff, knowing that at town meeting, it will be taken care of before the end of the year. So they're really not going into deficit.
Okay.
So for the most part, we pay them. Occasionally, we may have to hold on to it.
Okay.
But it does not affect our credit because we don't really have credit cards or anything like that. It's usually just vendors. It could be a window repair facility or, you know.
What happens in that scenario like that you were using about the transfer between, you know, departments? Say that $50,000 doesn't need to be transferred from interdepartmental, and then you go to the town meeting and town meeting nixes the transfer. What would you guys, what would be your next step in that process?
Say that again.
So you're gonna have to transfer money into departmental. You bring it to the town meeting votes no on the transfer, so that department is still short. What happens before the end of the year?
Well, that department will have to make cuts to make sure that they don't overspend their budget, because under Massachusetts state law, we're not allowed to run deficits within departments. If we were to run a deficit, it wouldn't look good on the finances, and the state will kind of slap our hand. And then when we go to certify our tax rate for the following year, they take that money right off the top. So when we're trying to balance the following year's budget, if it was a $50,000 deficit, we start with negative 50,000. It also hits free cash, so they reduce whatever free cash is certified in July by the amount of the deficit. And, probably get written up by the auditors too.
State of emergency, that's different. State of emergency.
Yes.
You have to spend it, spend it.
If there is an emergency, something unusual happens, could be, say, a hurricane, or then the board would meet and declare an emergency, and you're allowed to overspend, with the understanding that you're going to find the money at the next available opportunity, whether it be town meeting or finance committee meeting.
So for instance, if they voted to, say, turn that down and not transfer the money, the state would automatically say, what do you have in free cash starting July 1st?
Well, what would happen is the year would have to close first.
Mhm.
You know, and when I submit the balance sheet at the end of the year, and all of the, they'll see the deficit in the, whatever department it was, say police, 50,000. And they will hit free cash by 50,000. So if free cash was $3 million, it would be $2,950,000. And then they will also make it up on the tax recap.
And the snow budget's different, so.
The snow budget, you're allowed to overspend. And that's technically the only legal deficit in Massachusetts is the snow budget. If you overspend the budget, you will get hit by free cash, and you will have to raise it on the recap. But what we do is we try to fund it within the fiscal year at the May special town meeting. We take money out of free cash, and we balance out the account to zero so that when we start the following fiscal year, we're fresh. We don't have any lingering deficits.
So you don't have, because you do that, you don't have to say, all of a sudden bump the snow budget from 80,000 to 200,000.
Well, what happens with that is the state allows you to overspend the snow and ice deficit as long as you fund it at least the same amount that you funded it the year before. That's why it has stayed at 80,000. Because if we go to 100,000, then it has to be at least 100,000 every year. And because we know we can overspend it, they've decided to just leave it at 80,000 forever. And we overspend it every year.
It was 50.
It was 50.
50,000, it was like, I buy salt, sand, and I had to write a letter to the finance committee, I was already out of money.
I mean, I guess it could be increased a little bit because I don't think we've used 80,000 or less since I've been here.
Oh, time for questions?
Yeah, okay, no, yeah.
Thanks.
I can keep going, but please.
Yeah. So it was interesting you mentioned earlier about if the form of government changed, like you mentioned city council, it would make the job a little easier as far as the transfers go. Is there anything else that would change from your position, if the form of government
Well,
changed?
instead of, I guess, town accountant, we would consider a town auditor. The position title would probably change.
Right.
But the duties are essentially the same. I would still report to town manager or mayor
Right.
and the council.
Okay, that's interesting you mentioned that, because I was reading the Watertown bylaws today, and I noticed that it was kind of town auditor, and I was kind of wondering why they call it that.
Yeah, if it's a city council form of government, they call it auditors.
Oh, okay. There you go, now I understand that. Thank you. Anything else, or any other changes that you would foresee if there's a different form of government?
Not really. I mean, I'm hoping that all of the boards start getting along a little better and
Yeah.
work together towards a common goal and get the town in the right direction.
So the approval process would be the same, for example, no matter what form of government we had?
Correct. I think there is, and I'm not sure which form of government exactly that is, but there is one where they have a city council form of government and they delegate the authority to sign up to all the department heads, pretty much. So the boards wouldn't have to
Oh, okay.
sign. That would be great.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you.
Are there any state agencies that grade towns' fiscal health within Massachusetts?
Not that I know of. I mean, I guess the audit report that the independent auditors come in once a year, they audit the books and they issue a management report and issue financial statements in accordance with government accounting principles. And if you're not doing good, they'll let you know right there. Also, the bond rating agency, when we go out to, the interest rate will be high if you're not doing good.
Okay.
So I guess bond ratings, they do rate you.
Okay. Are there any other changes in town government that you might like to see? Is any-
I'm okay staying the way it is, or going, doesn't really make much of a difference. some of them would make it a little easier for me, some processes, but I know that a lot of residents want their right to go to town meeting. So there are pros and cons, you know. So I'm open to whatever you guys
Okay.
decide, I guess. And the residents decide.
Any other questions?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. Hi, Mr. Giuseppe. How are you?
Good, how's everyone?
How are you?
It's Paul.
Hi, Paul.
And I apologize, I actually did respond, but I didn't email. If I can email tomorrow,
fine.
that's okay.
What have you got?
Just responses to the questions.
Oh, no,
I was
that's
just
fine.
writing up my own notes, but
Nope,
I'll
that's
copy
great.
some
It's
of them.
more just to kind of get you thinking about what we might be asking. Honestly, we would kind of prefer it to be a dialogue. It makes it a little bit easier and helps us ask questions on the fly. Okay, you are the Director of Planning and Economic Development, and you have been in that role for just over a year?
Just over a year.
And why don't you just give us a brief explanation of your role and then talk a little bit about your staff?
Well, we're actually staffed to two boards, the planning board and the zoning board of appeals. So the planning board is an elected body, the ZBA, Boss is on the ZBA. So our primary function is staffed to two boards. So we process all the applications that might come into a planning board, such as a site plan or subdivision, or variance applications that come to the ZBA. We also provide reviews of those. We do a lot of the administrative behind-the-scenes things, like making sure they pay their fees, and we put the notices in the paper, notice to the abutters. We also have a long-range planning function. For example, we are launching now an update to the town master plan. So we're contracting out for that. And we also have an economic development aspect of it, which, to be honest with you, I haven't really spent a great deal of time on this year. Mainly, because of the staffing issues. There's just two of us. In fact, right now, there's just one of us. My administrative assistant's been on maternity leave. We'll be coming back the end of September, but that's 3 months. And in fact, in the year I've been here, I've been alone about 6 months out of it, between filling the position and then, maternity leave.
Mm-hmm.
And that has, created some challenges in terms of not being able to get to certain things I would really like to, like being able to do more of the economic development, like doing more outreach with the community. There's a lot of things we could do just to have interactions with people, which we will be doing as part of the master plan, but I don't think we're going to do as much as I would like.
So you attend each planning board and ZBA meeting?
Yes.
But you report to Michael Units?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you have a challenge because you've got one elected and one appointed board. Are you happy with the way those members are assigned to those boards?
Well, I can't say that I have the expertise to weigh in on it, but I think, I feel like I have a very good relationship with both, and I respect both boards. I think they make good decisions. I think they're very transparent, very ethical.
And you're happy with the way you work together currently?
Yeah, very much.
Okay, I'm assuming it's still, given it's probably a little bit of a work in progress and trial by fire with having been just recently hired and still kind of finding your way and getting everything updated.
The first 6 months were really interesting, especially when I started. There was nobody, not pointing where the office is, but there was nobody in planning.
Yep.
My predecessor left a month earlier. We did have an administrative assistant there who, unfortunately for her, when she started was right when my predecessor was leaving and didn't really know the position. And so, fortunately though, I had a lot of support here from really all the departments that are here. People offered up help, from teaching me how to do, pay bills to getting the notices out, all the processes. And then at the higher level, Mike always stepped up when I had questions for him. It was a challenge though, because there was no institutional knowledge on a lot of the planning ends of it. My predecessor left notes behind, but it wasn't like I had anyone who worked in planning to talk with about, okay, what happens here? So, and this was my first job in Massachusetts, so vernacular's different. I had no idea what an abutter was. Approval's not required. Every state has a different way of stating those things. So it was learning the language, but then learning the nuances of all of it. Okay. So I've been here a year, and I'm definitely more comfortable than I was a year ago.
Are you happy with the level of autonomy in your role?
It is. What was interesting, and I'm not weighing in because I do feel it works well. This is the first board I've ever worked for where they actually approve the bills. Okay. So in other places I've worked, which were city council, mayor and city council, city manager forms of government, the departments paid, paid without needing to go in front of the planning board to have them authorize it. But again, I think it works fine here. Okay. I think the board has always been very supportive, and it does put bills out in public, so it increases transparency. So I think that's a good thing.
Okay. Do you feel you have enough oversight or guidance from your board and or your manager?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, the boards have a lot of oversight. They're the ones who issue decisions. They're the ones that approve the bills. And then again, fortunately, Mike was extremely supportive and is always there. It's great because I've worked for one large city, Austin, Texas, and it was 13,000 employees with the city. So I was not at a director's level, so I wasn't getting to meet with the city manager. Here, it's much more accessible. And again, when I have situations where I need town manager support or perspective, it's always been great, whether it's him or his staff. Okay. And then other departments, always, I work closely with James and Lucia and everyone in this building, water department. So it's quite a good place to be working.
Okay. We'd actually, in our research, had read a charter where, and we've only seen one, the planning board actually hired their own director. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
I've heard about that. My preference would be to have it the way it is here. We're hired by the town manager, that I get to work directly with that person. I'd rather work directly, with, a non-staff person rather than a board. I haven't been in that situation, so I could be mistaken, but at least there's opportunities to work, work very closely with them and understand where, what their directions are, what their goals are. And it helps, it really helps too to understand the, long-range perspective that a town manager brings to it. And not just only that, but also what the other departments are going through. So knowing what, I don't want to make a decision that really negatively impacts another department. So a town manager, would, has that ability to see everything. Mm-hmm. Whereas a planning board couldn't.
Do you have access to everything you need in terms of, we talked a little bit about people already, but information and technology? I know you've got a...
No.
No, we know you have a brand new zoning.
Yes, but what we don't, but it wasn't, we didn't put that map together.
Okay.
we need what we call a geographic information specialist.
Okay.
We need a GIS analyst, and it could be a person that should work for all the departments, or any of the ones that have mapping needs. But we don't even have the mapping software.
Okay.
But I would also prefer to have a person who, that's a really technical skill. I've done it in the past, but I'm not proficient at it, and it's one of those, if you don't use it, I just lose it. And it's not something I really want to be doing anymore.
Okay.
But we need it. It would also be great to have a planner assistant to be able to take on, certainly more of the day-to-day activities, which would allow me to focus more on economic development and the long-range planning. But they would too, but it would be nice to have that and have some institutional knowledge. And what happens if I get sick this month? Then there's nobody there.
Yep.
So, but we need more technology from the mapping. We're trying to procure. You asked James this question about that came up about credit cards. So I've been trying for months to get a professional business version of a file sharing program called Dropbox. File sharing is just simply, we use it. It's a folder that the public multiple people can access it at one time. We use it.
We use it.
Okay, so we use a free version of it.
Mm-hmm.
We've
Same.
been trying to get a business version of it, but the company doesn't, they only take credit cards, which we don't have. They will do invoices, but you need some absurdly high number of licenses that we don't have the need for. So we're working through it, trying to figure that out. But especially now with town meeting, with the warrants in, I want to give the public a chance to see these files digitally.
Mm-hmm.
And like when we get, whether it's a ZBA or planning board, I want the public to be able to go to their websites, be able to click on it and see the files. We don't have the bandwidth to do it. I did it recently when we had, some of you know about the controversial solar facility on the Cranberry Bog on Bay Road. I had to delete a bunch of files in Dropbox to make room so the public could see it. We need to make sure we get enough bandwidth on that program so that we can start putting everything up there and not have to keep shuffling around. But technology could really help us. And again, help the public because they'll have it. They'll have everything that the boards have. And again, that's transparency.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about a geographic analyst, was it?
It's called a GIS analyst, Geographic Information Systems Analyst.
Okay.
It's professional mapping.
Okay.
So they could take, for example, that zoning map you were referring to.
Yep.
What they do is they know how to look, they have all the parcel data that the assessors have, and they can label all the different properties and put all sorts of information on it, from zoning to, overlay or environmental. And that again could be, the water department could use it, for example, because plenty of city departments, cities that are around the country will have this mapping software, so they can identify digitally where their existing infrastructure is and where they'd like it to be. And you could think the Board of Health could use it for different health reasons, conservation. Again, we could do it to apply a lot of different information visually so the public can see what the town looks like.
So is this, can I ask, is this the GIS, is this a software or is this a person? Excuse me.
It's actually both. It's a software and a person
That comes along with it, okay.
Yeah.
All right, and that would be a position you would want to see in the whole of the town, or would it be something that you would use and contract out and show you how to use it and then move the person on, or?
My hope is it could be used, an employee or employees, and it could be used by any of the town departments or even the boards.
Uh-huh.
I have a GIS. I have it on me, Bob. We mark all our water mains, catch basins.
You do?
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, this is Keith. Keith, this is Paul.
Glad you came.
Okay, now,
Keith, do you have a staffer who's dedicated to it, or you outsourced it?
I got 2 of my employees that we bought it, and the guy trained us.
Yeah,
So it's really comes.
It is. It's a
You
great
Google
program.
Earth, you go on and you see all the catch basins.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay, so I didn't know Keith. did that. But I still, well, it's still an important.
Yeah.
It's very good
We've
tool.
talked about we've talked about this with other departments. I think we'd all have a pretty significant need for it.
Could it be incorporated into the one the assessors have now? Because I know they have like a software version of that GIS that,
It is.
I mean, obviously it's limited, but,
Right, and we don't add data to it.
so if that could be updated with the assessor and you guys could put in, say, zoning and,
Yeah.
you know, stuff like that, so the town could see the overlays of what you're talking about.
And the state has quite a bit, from transportation to our. I think another position would be important, Keith, please weigh in, engineers. We have to, we basically have to go through what we call a peer review, which is, if we have a site plan that comes into the planning board, because we don't have any engineers on staff, we have to, we have a few engineering firms that we work with that we ask them to provide us with a proposal. And then the applicant and us, we all work together to finalize that proposal. Then the applicant pays the town that amount, and that money gets put into an account that can only be used by that engineering firm to do the reviews. Which works okay, but we do enough of it, it's at the point where you go, why don't we have some engineers on staff?
We do need an engineer. Go over plans.
Over plans, but we have
Public
traffic,
stuff.
we have, like even applying for that complete streets, I have to finalize, but we might need an engineering stamp on it. Well, it's a lot harder when we don't have an engineer.
Costs a lot more money.
It costs a lot more.
If we ever assess what we're spending on outsourcing versus what it would cost to have.
Well, for peer reviews, we don't pay for it. It's an applicant, so it varies based on how much, you know, the scope of the project. But one of the projects I worked on was as much as, it was $35,000 that the applicant paid for. And some are smaller, where it might be $5,000.
Have you seen that as a deterrent for some people to come in that are going for plans?
Well, it's a good question. I think that if you get a small, say, mom and pop shop, that might be an expense that they may want to build. That might be an expense they don't think about, that we might go, well, this is big enough that I can't review the traffic engineering of this. I'm not an engineer, so could be. And I just think the customer service is so important that if we were able to, you know, people come and meet with us to try to meet up front early, and Mike has always wanted the directors to meet when we get projects like site plans. Meet early, identify issues, and that's a great opportunity. When Keith comes in, the fire chief comes in, say, these are the things we're looking for. I think that's very helpful. I think where we do lack is on the engineering side of it. Is this turning radius appropriate? Keith probably knows more than anybody here about that, but that's you know, but Keith's not a PE, so.
So thinking about the economic development piece and coming off of that, are there other towns in the area that you know of that have the applicants pay for that peer review, or are we the only ones?
Well, that's by state law. The state allows us to collect that money for services that we don't have.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of communities do peer reviews.
But they don't, because they don't have engineering staff on.
Right, you do it because you don't have the resources to provide that review.
Can I just jump in I work with a bunch of towns who do have an engineer on staff, whether it be the head of DPW, but sometimes you still need that peer review who can do a more thorough job, and then it's nice to have the engineer to be able to sort of interpret what the peer reviewer is coming up with as well. But many towns do peer reviews, whether they have an engineer or not.
And it's gonna be based on what times they have available, the level of work, and so forth. I just think it would be a good thing for us to be looking at.
Yeah, I think some of these questions is, does this hurt us as a town? I mean, do like contractors get frustrated with us and say, you know what, if I was in Easton, this would be a lot quicker because.
I don't think it does. I mean, I've certainly heard applicants complain about the peer review itself, but the peer review is an independent review. And they may disagree with the findings, but that's engineer to engineer.
Yeah, it's just as you were talking about.
The peer reviewer works for us,
right.
We have to accept their.
Sure, but we don't have an engineer that kind of oversees that process. We don't have some maps that perhaps other towns have.
No, you know, you might have like Jen Carlino certainly has many years of stormwater review, you know, so it's possible she could look at something and look at it, he could.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, sure. Some everyone's working as hard as they can. And my only point was, does it hurt us because we don't have these resources?
Yeah, I don't think it hurts us because we do have the peer review. But again, there could be a circumstance where, you know, small business could get hurt by it, potentially. It hasn't come up yet, but we always try to work with them. If we don't feel like we need to do the peer review, which we had a project recently for a bakery in the last year on 123. It was a small.
Really yummy.
We funded yes. And we didn't require a peer review of the project. It was a couple thousand square foot building. It just didn't seem to warrant that type of extra review.
Right.
But that's a judgment call.
Yeah, I was just, again, I go back to the same thing. I walk into other town halls that I have to go to for different reasons, and it's like walking into a business sometimes, you know, the staff is there and things move along pretty quickly. Whereas no one, perhaps it doesn't, I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there.
Along the lines of the regionalized communications, is there any ability to regionalize a geographic systems analyst for a small subset of towns where they could share a resource?
Well, I think that's the role of our regional planning agency, SERPIT, the Southeastern Regional Planning and Economic Development. They're the ones who do ours. They're the ones that actually put that zoning layer together.
Okay.
So they do provide that function. And it works fine, it's just we don't have it, and they have limitations too. They're always great, but they're not.
They're with all the towns.
Right, they're working with 30 other towns, and so it could take months to get, you know, something. I'd really like to be having a bit quicker response to getting work produced.
Okay.
It's a great group.
Yeah, they're terrific. They're the ones. They're the project managers for the master plan. They've done good work on some of the other communities where they've written plans. They do our GIS work and a whole host of other.
Can I ask a follow-up about the master? You mentioned a master plan again. So I just wanted to jump in and see, who do you ultimately see overseeing that master plan? Is that something that you would do, the planning board would do, collectively different departments?
It falls under the planning board.
Okay.
So they're ultimately responsible, although we want to take it to town meeting. But the way we're developing this is we want to work with all the departments and then go to any of the appropriate boards and commissions. In fact, we're going to be creating a master plan committee, and the goal is to take a member from probably 7 or 8 committees that deal with land use or infrastructure and have them also kind of be a sounding board to it. It's important to do this because the plan will be implemented by everybody, every department, and so we need their buy-in, we need their expertise to say, okay, we don't say it like that, we say it like this, or this is the project we want to bring forward. So, boards will have a big role to play in it. And we'll present as needed or requested to different boards, but we do want to have that master plan committee made up of 7 or 8 different boards to sit in periodically.
I understand it's early, obviously, in this master plan, type thing, and I don't want to pressure you out, but like, what do you see as the biggest obstacle facing that, for that actual changes in any of the things that come up in this plan?
Well, my initial concern is just not, as the planning director, not having enough time to focus on it. I'm very confident with Serpent's team, but I feel like as the planning director, I should have more time devoted to it. There's a lot of outreach that could be done. There's a lot of coordination internally that will need to be done, that has to be done. That's going to be an initial big challenge. The others, until we're having our first meeting, our what we call the Discovery Workshop on September 28th, and I'm excited for it because I'll be curious to see what comes out of it. I think following up with what Lucia said earlier about the current climate we're in, which has really been going on for years, where it just seems like all the years I've been in local government, it's challenging today, more challenging than it was 15 years ago. We need to create public discourse where people feel safe to provide us with their input, their thoughts about the town and the future of it. So we're spending a lot of time thinking about developing exercises in a format that people can come in, hopefully actually have a good time, feel energized by it, hear a lot of great ideas, and really want to get behind the plan. But that's probably tougher to do now. People, more and more people seem to not have the filters that they once did, and we need to be ready for that. We want to promote positive environments and getting people to just think forward, think about the entire community. And then the money to make it happen. Whatever projects come out of it, we'll have to work on it, but.
So is it going to fall strictly on your shoulders to try to bring like these committees together? Like, say, for instance, obviously planning and zoning, but you have other committees that are just for an example, the center of town.
Right.
It's not just zoning, it's not just water, it's not just conservation. You have to bring in a historical society, historical commission. Like, is that going to fall on your shoulders to try to bring some of these? I mean, we know some of the rules that the historical commission has in that area. For instance, I know that the plan was for the center. Like, is that it's going to fall strictly on your shoulders to try to bring them together and try to work something out?
Falls on me or the department, but so yeah, that's fine. When I worked for the city of Austin, I wasn't hardly it. We had a very large team working on our comprehensive plan, but we would go out every week and meet with different boards and commissions and groups out in the public, but we had to take responsibility for it. So, but that is a concern. How much can one person do? I'm sort of hoping that this internal, or this committee made up of committees will assume some of that, but we'll have to see how it goes. That's a big priority, and we want a great plan, and that captures what the public wants, and a plan that can be achievable.
So will the master plan committee stay on for indefinitely and until to try to keep it? Is that the goal?
Hadn't thought that far, but it could, because the plan, once the plan is adopted, I view that as just the beginning, because then you want to implement it. And we might need it. But again, that would probably be a decision that the planning board would need to make, since master plans fall under their purview in our charter.
Okay.
All right. I think we've talked a lot about trends in the industry. Any regulatory issues that you see coming?
I don't think there's anything coming from the state at this point. I haven't, I have to admit, I am not as well versed on what is being talked about in Boston right now, anything related to planning. But I don't know at this point what those could be, what regulatory changes could be occurring, but yeah, it's something I have to keep. Fortunately, I am a member of the Massachusetts chapter of the American Planning Association, so they do a lot of the legislative work and they routinely email us, but I don't remember seeing anything that made me go, okay, you're gonna have to change direction here.
Do you presently live in Norton?
No.
What do you like about Norton's town government?
Yeah, as I think I've mentioned throughout, that I think it's just very supportive, and we get the help we need, and get it quickly and get answers. And again, that, having worked for a large city, that's a real good thing compared to what it could take.
Okay.
And it's great that people are just work well together. The biggest part is, again, when you need people to tell you here's the direction, here's the answer, that you get it, and you get it quickly.
Other things you don't like about Norton's town government?
I feel like it really works well. Again, now I'm here a year, I'm feeling more comfortable and seeing things better. And from what I see, I really like it.
Are there any changes that you'd like to see to the town government?
Well, we talked about the position, so
Yep.
that's and the technology.
Yeah. Anything that we didn't ask you that you'd like to bring up, raise?
No, I think I've said everything.
Okay.
I was going to mention, Paul, I'll put my ZBA hat on for just
Sure.
a second. Within the ZBA, we talked a little bit about restructuring that board a little bit. And so the board currently consists of 5 members, 3, I guess, permanent members, I guess.
Yeah.
And then 2 alternates. So what ends up happening is you have 3 members who can vote. And the other 2 alternate, the alternates are truly alternates, so if the permanent members doesn't show up, they become an alternate. And if all 5 of us show up, 2 of them sit there, can participate, but at the end of the day, cannot vote. And some of these discussions go on for meeting after meeting, so it's going to be a long period of time. So there's been some discussion with perhaps changing to a 5-member board where they all can vote. But there is some questions about quorums, and there is some drawbacks potentially.
Town council.
Yeah, so I think-
Would you still have alternates? With 5?
I think we would. I'm not really sure the answer to that, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that there's something that Tom Knoll, the chairman, wanted town council to kind of weigh in on it, whether or not it made sense, because there's pluses and minuses, and we're not quite versed on what those are exactly.
Has it always been 3 with 2 alternates?
As far as I know, yes. It was very confusing. I know when I first went on the board, I was actually when you get appointed, you were actually appointed as a permanent or an alternate. But when I got appointed, for example, it was assumed I was an alternate because I was new, and so I became the alternate, but technically I was actually a permanent member because my slot, if you will, was a permanent member, right?
But
Yeah, I
it
mean-
doesn't rotate like that?
No, it's not based on seniority or anything like that, it's just,
The board was down.
Thrown to the fire.
members.
yeah, it was kind of weird though, because
So someone moved up and you moved
Yeah, well, we didn't
down.
realize at first, so I was an alternate for the longest time, even though technically I wasn't an alternate, but we didn't realize.
So in the ZBA, the alternates could vote if they needed to make a quorum?
Right.
Okay.
Just 3.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a little different how it's set up.
Okay. Any other questions for Paul? We very much appreciate time. Sorry to make you sit through all of the.
No, Mrs. Fred, I appreciate you having us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Take care.
When you, were you? Oh, shoot.
No, I
It
just function as an alternate. 4 months.
And then you moved into permanent?
Yeah.
Someone moved back to the alternate?
All right.
Well, we didn't.
Going back to the agenda, we have the minutes of the last meeting. Looking for the acceptance of the minutes of Monday, August 19th meeting. Give you a bite? Yeah, kidding.
I think the original concept.
There any questions or discussions about the minutes?
No, other than saying that they're 100 times better than I could ever do.
Same. Sandy
Kudos to
does.
Sandy for that.
Sandy does a good job. We got plenty. I'll take a motion to accept the meeting minutes of August 19th.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? We're passed. All right.
Not sure.
Who was the first?
I don't know. I heard the second.
I heard
Oh,
second.
did anybody
I'm
first?
sorry, I thought you first.
Oh,
I'll do take the first.
Kevin was the.
Jumping ahead.
I thought I missed the first, sorry.
Oh, I thought you'd done the first.
No. I take the motion.
We'll get it done.
We will.
By December, we'll have this done.
Exactly. All right. Administrative items. Okay, remote participation. The Board of Selectmen met last Thursday, and the subject came up again. Unfortunately, they decided not to take a vote. And a couple of members had decided that they wanted to have regardless of the Attorney General's regulations, wanted to put town policy in place. From what I could gather, it sounds like it was us and Parks and Recreation of the committees that were polled that had an interest in using it. And I had already made my case at the Board of Selectmen meeting, 2 meetings prior, that, it was critical for us due to the fact that we are time-sensitive. We are the only commission working on a deadline. And so I'm hoping that this gets accomplished sooner rather than later, but the board decided to table it again while Mike Units puts together a policy for the town to adopt. There seems to be some confusion as to whether their voting is allowed by a remote participation member. The regulations are fairly clear that they can vote, provided that there is a quorum physically present, and there is a chair or acting chair present within the meeting. So, for example, if I needed to participate remotely, Kevin would have to be available to act as chair. So I'm contemplating just drafting up just a quick email to the Board of Selectmen and the town manager. They were asking for comment, and just reiterating our view of the need for it, and highlighting a couple of the regulations, and also just stipulating that just because the Board of Selectmen adopt it doesn't necessarily mean every subsequent board or commission needs to adopt it. It's up to their own decision. But I will reiterate the urgency with which we need that approved, and would appreciate that being approved. And we'll see if that gets us somewhere. But at this point, I'm assuming we probably won't see any activity on that for the next meeting or two. But I will do my best. Next topic, requesting information. With the understanding that some of us sit on other boards and commissions and make requests of public information in that capacity, or even as an individual citizen. I would just like to ask that if, in the event that a request is to be made on behalf of the Charter Commission, if you could make the commission aware of the request within an open meeting so that there is knowledge by all of the commission and record of it being sought and requested. If that's okay. Peter, anything you want to talk about? Okay. All right, moving on. We met with the board, we met with the town clerk, town accountant, planning, upcoming interview schedule. Sandy's actually got us booked all the way into December, which seems like a really far ways off, but I suppose it's not. All right, so ZBA is going to let you talk on their behalf?
Oh, are you on here?
Isn't that what you kind of said?
Just nod your head yes.
That Tom, isn't that,
Oh.
David, what you said, Tom kind
Oh,
of
they will let,
indicated?
yes.
That he wasn't really
He's not gonna
interested
show
in
up.
coming in, right? But
Okay. I will work on the chair of the IDC and make sure that they get back to you. I think you can give them 2 opportunities to respond, and if not, then I think we've done our due diligence. We can't force people to come and speak with us. But it looks like we do have a good pipeline of people who are willing and able to come and meet with us, which is great. And then there's, 1, 2, 3, 4 more still left to be scheduled.
Can I ask a quick question? Is it just a typo for October 22nd, or are we meeting on a Tuesday that week?
We are meeting on a Tuesday that week. The town meeting was on the 21st, so we've moved our meeting to the 22nd.
yeah, Keith, I think, do you know, I forget which one of these you were listed on. Town Common Committee?
Yeah.
Does that exist?
Yeah.
Do you need to? I can't find anybody who's on it besides you.
Bob Kimball, I'm on it. Butch was on it. Sandy Rena.
So do you have meetings at all, or?
Yeah.
Okay,
We haven't had a meeting in a while.
okay.
Last one, we were doing the fun.
So is Bob the chair? Who's the chair of that? Do you know?
I think Bob Kimball was. the
Okay.
chair. He's coming in. isn't he?
Yeah, he is. We'll add that to his list.
Is there anybody else you're having trouble getting a hold of that somebody here may know?
No, I mean, I think the Open Space Committee, my understanding is that they only meet when they come up with a plan, open space plan, what do they call it? Something like that. So that was, there wasn't really anybody listed on that, and the people I asked, so they don't, but they're not meeting now. They only do it when they do a
Okay.
plan. And then Historical Commission, I've asked everybody on the list that Lucia gave me, and none of them are on it, and none of them think it exists.
Okay.
So, if anybody hears anything differently, then
Okay.
I can reach out, but,
Sammy's on that too, so. Same area.
okay.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we're doing our due diligence and trying to at least track down the folks. Do you see us going past December, or needing to go past December?
No, I think we can get them all in. I mean, there's the 4 that are definitely interested,
Yep.
and they easily can fit in. And then just IDC, Cultural Council, and Historic District Commission would be the only 3 that just haven't heard from, so I'm gonna follow up one more time with them.
Okay.
But we still have, I think, room for them if they wanna come.
Great. All right. There was Sandy had gotten a hold of the folks at the MMA, who are very happy to come in and meet with us when we're ready. In looking at our schedule and also just given the list of questions that even I just had, I think it might make sense, and I wanted to bring it up for discussion, to meet with the MMA and possibly Lauren Goldberg in a meeting outside of our normal schedule, just so that we can devote a decent amount of time to those questions and getting things answered, and without having to hold everybody up with commission meetings during our normal schedule. So my initial thought, it would be obviously better to wait until we had read at least a couple of town council charters. And the thought is that maybe in early November, have them come in and meet with us. So they were looking for some dates, if we could check our calendars and possibly give them a few options. And again, the thought, and I don't know whether this will work or not, but I have a lot of the same types of questions for the MMA as I do for Lauren, and that it might make sense to meet with them all simultaneously. In November, we are meeting on the 14th and the 18th.
Fourth.
Sorry, the 4th and the 18th. The 11th is Veterans Day. We don't necessarily have to meet on a Monday. But can we propose a few dates for them? See if we can come up with some possibilities.
Tuesday's tough for me.
Tuesdays are tough for you?
Tuesdays in general, or that Tuesday?
In general.
Okay. We also don't want to interfere with the Board of Selectmen meeting. They're meeting on the, looks like the 3rd, the 17th, and the 31st of October, which would put them on the 14th and the 28th.
What about the 13th? It's a Wednesday of that week.
I can't make that.
I have a IDC meeting.
4th meeting, 17th, 31, 14th, and the 28th is Thanksgiving.
How about the
Isn't IDC
7th?
meeting that night already?
I could make the 7th.
I can do the 7th.
7th.
Could we look at the week before, maybe?
They were looking at the 7th.
The last week of October?
October, sure.
Just as get a couple more dates.
Board of Selectmen are meeting on the 31st.
Board of Selectmen meeting on the 31st?
Halloween.
Wow.
What about Monday, what about Monday the 28th? That would put us with 2 meetings, I mean,
Yeah.
3 meetings in a row, but at least we would keep it on the Monday schedule.
Yep, I can do the 28th. The only thing I wanted to point out is on the calendar I sent you, if you had an interest in going to the Milford's town meeting, it happens to be that night. I had it on my calendar as possibly going to that, but I can certainly rearrange it. Does the 28th work as an alternate date?
Yep.
So we're gonna go with the 7th and then the 28th? Is that what the plan was?
No, 7th, the 21st, and the 28th.
Oh, as possible dates, and then you'll let us know.
Oh, sorry. I thought we were talking about October. So, yes, we were going to go back to those,
Town meeting,
The-
the town meeting was the 21st.
yes.
October,
Yeah.
So first choice is November 7th,
Yep.
okay?
And then October 28th as a alternative if that doesn't work. Do we want to propose a third, or did we have enough trouble finding 2?
Let's see where we're at with 2.
Okay. All right. Since the MMA is going to be bringing more people than just Lauren, why don't you try and coordinate with them and see which date works better, and then we'll hope that works for Lauren? Okay.
What does MMA stand for, just for my,
Mass Municipal Association.
okay.
So they have a form of government committee that will send various people out to charter commissions or to talk to people. So
Oh,
it's-
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were nice enough to, if there were specific towns or types of government that we wanted to come, they would try and tailor it for us specifically. They also had a questionnaire they had sent out, things to think about before we meet with them, and once we get them scheduled, I'll send that out for the group to think about. Yes?
You think we should try to get the library?
To try and get the
Try
what?
to get the library for the meeting?
So there's more space for them?
Oh, yeah, possibly. They might allow that. Let's narrow down the date and then see how many there.
When we get closer, I'll
Yeah.
try to get the library.
Okay, great.
That's a great idea. Thank you. Okay. Okay.
Can I just throw something out? I'm just thinking out loud here.
Sure.
And I'm sorry. I'm saying in trouble, so. Yeah. But, we're still going through the interviews. We won't really be wrapping it up until, I guess, early December, it looks like.
Yep.
So I'm just thinking out loud, that I guess in my mind, if by the end of the year, like, we kind of came to like a conclusion, like, we wrapped that phase up.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of going to the next phase, which is, I guess, the nitty gritty, if you will.
Yep.
So I guess I was sort of thinking, are we better off to kind of maybe have gone through a few of those types of discussions? What are people thinking, forms of governments, and then have them come in? And I guess I'm thinking too, with the holidays,
Yep.
you have them come in November, late October, you get into the holiday season, and then, things get lost a little bit.
Mhm.
And then you can start the new year off kind of strong, if you will.
We'll get to it in a little bit I updated the timeline, and one of the things that I had accounted for within it, and obviously up for discussion, was that once we kind of get into the discussions, if there were specific towns that we might want to invite for specific purposes to answer some questions that we might be struggling with. I'm also thinking we probably will need to bring Lauren back at some point. And, yeah, viewing that during the first quarter. But I don't know. I keep thinking we have plenty of time, and then I look at the schedule and go, we don't have enough time.
Yeah, no, I hear you there
I
too.
feel like that would give us a good overview. Just, yeah, I think that's kind of what they're.
I guess I was just thinking it'd be
designed
more
to do.
productive if we kind of went in there and said, this is sort of a big picture of what we're sort of thinking.
Yep.
And they tailored that a little bit, versus.
I think I'd want to hear the overview first before we made like any decisions, like just so that we have more information about the forms of government and they just might be able to help inform our discussions.
I agree, yeah.
Yeah.
And so the meetings itself that we're talking about with the MMA and Lauren coming in, and those first dates are informative for us. We're not looking
So I was gonna say, what
to
is the-
do or set anything else in motion. We're just looking to hear what they have to tell us.
Yeah.
Okay, 'cause I thought
Yeah,
I read
I've got a-
something- I thought someone
That's
said
a
something
question.
about them asking us to give them an idea.
They had, yeah, there was a, here, I'll read it.
'Cause I
So
guess
yeah,
I'm-
that's why my
yeah,
question
That's
is
kind of
the
what I
same
was
thing.
thinking, like, you know, if
We
I'm them, I
want
want to
to
hear
address
what you
questions,
think.
not questions.
Yeah. They were,
For that meeting with MMA, right?
yeah, I'm not exactly sure they're aware of our role as a charter commission as opposed to just a charter review committee. So, you know, he said some questions that the committee could ponder at the outset related to why we think it's necessary to look at a charter change. And then he has just kind of a list of questions of things to think about. But again, I think you're right in that we already have an idea of, you know, directions that we want to be going and things that we want to, you know, specifically talk about.
He
And-
had said that if we had specific things we were looking at, we wanted, you know, just, and I said I prefer, I think, the consensus, what we were just looking for is, give me one of every type, and let's kind of hear pros and cons from those who are, you know, in the trenches and dealing with it.
So,
Sure.
that meeting was gonna be to meet with MMA, and the item on here says meet with Lauren Goldberg to address questions. So is that questions about the form of government that we're interested in, or is that questions that you've got a list of questions that you've been tallying up as we go along?
I'm sorry, where are you?
Line item 34 on your timeline.
Oh, sorry.
I'm assuming that's.
I haven't gotten there yet.
She's asking why is Lauren.
She's
why is
jumping
Lauren
ahead.
coming
So
in?
why is Lauren coming, I guess is the question, really, is that right?
When coming with the MMA?
Yeah.
Because I think Carrie had said we had actually tried to get her to come in a month ago. Somebody had requested that they had some questions and wanted to bounce some things
That's
off.
separate from this, then?
Separate
From
from,
this, item 34, the questions that are on here. Is that something different?
yes.
Same one? Okay.
Well, yes and no. My thought was to have it in the same meeting, not necessarily at the same time.
Because I
Okay.
think there were a handful of legal questions.
So I'm just trying to figure out like how to prep for that meeting, like what are we looking to ask her? Just questions that we have in general about different charter types?
Yes, so I've got a fairly decent list of Lauren questions. I think Carrie had a list of questions for Lauren
Okay.
specifically.
Okay.
Some of mine are definitely, you know, could be answered by the MMA as well. But I had actually proposed for her to come in sometime over the past month, and I'm going to have to pick up the phone, I think, because email doesn't seem to be the way to get her attention.
I think having her here during the MMA will at least give us some direction if we have some legal questions to bounce off her. If MMA is explaining stuff to us about, you know, whatever they want to give us for information on different things, I wonder how it would apply to us in our exact charter. So I think having her here would benefit me at least to be able to say, well, that's great. If we wanted to do that, how would it apply for us? You know what I mean?
I think she's also a good resource in terms of if we had a specific question, she could say, well, I worked with the town of Westwood, and I can put you in contact with the correct person, and then we can reach out to them for a follow-up meeting if needed.
Okay.
All right. Okay, next on the agenda is reviewing the board, committee, commission-specific questions, some of which I threw out tonight since we met with our first board. Now I can't find my list. I had emailed this, I don't even know how long ago, a couple of weeks ago. It was part of brainstorming specifically board type questions. I don't know if anybody had any questions, comments, edits.
I was wondering if, what people thought of, for the last 3 questions, mirroring the survey questions. I think we asked the survey questions in kind of passive voice and said, you know, what would you stop, what would you start, and what would you continue? And I don't know if that makes people more likely to offer their opinion rather than put it on them and say, what do you like versus what do you not like? I don't know. That was just a thought.
Specifically related to, do we relate it to town government in the questionnaire?
Yeah, so what, you know.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be the exact wording of the survey question, but just sort of making it a little more, not directing it so much at the person, just trying to elicit some more, you know, if it's more passive, then maybe they'll be more willing to offer an honest opinion.
And would you make similar, obviously not the language from the survey, but make similar changes to more of a passive voice around the questions of, are you happy with? Because that...
I think those ones were asking for their experience.
Okay.
So we might want to direct it more at them, what they specifically have experienced in their role.
Yeah.
I suppose we could ask, do you think it's effective or efficient, or rather than are you happy with? But
Yeah. I could see some people being maybe put on the spot.
Yeah.
yeah.
How would we rephrase it, Carrie, again?
Maybe, you know, do you think the way your board works with department staff is efficient or helpful or effective?
Or even just, do you have any feedback for us on
About-
how
yeah.
you work with the staff? Or do you have any feedback for us on how members are chosen, on the number of members, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to ask, is there anything you'd like to change? 'Cause that's kind of a leading question, right?
Okay. Any other suggestions?
No. Thank you for pulling these together.
Sure. All right. So I think we're prepared for that going forward. Survey. I checked earlier this afternoon. We have 85 responses. I saw in the minutes, I think we had 69 3 weeks ago. We are going to do another push. Janie is going to follow up with Christian Zahner and see if we can get the Norton Alerts post out there. I've talked to Lucia earlier today, and she's agreed to send out a post on behalf of the town clerk. And then, I forget when we went live. It was just after the last meeting, so it's probably just been about a month. My thought is if we'll do another kind of Facebook push if and when you see the posts from Norton Alerts and/or the town clerk. If you could share them, hopefully that'll get us a little bit more of an outreach, and we'll give it another 2 weeks. And I'll do a reminder Norton Alert via email. I'm still reticent to do it over the phone. I'm just afraid we're going to it reaches a lot more people. One, I'm afraid of the backlash, and two, I think it's very hard to relate a link to a website, even if we just say go to the Norton Charter Commission's webpage. I think we're going to irritate people more than anything. So I'm still inclined to, even though we're not reaching very many people, we're only reaching, I think it was like 550 people on Norton Alerts via email. It's still better than nothing. So we'll try another push there if anybody has any ideas for other ways of getting the information out, other than just harassing people that you see on the street.
Could we reach out to Sun Chronicle again and try to see if they might do an update on us and then put the survey?
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I think you had reached out to Stephen before, right? And wasn't there something about you could reach out to him and let him know if there's any updates?
Yeah, I can send him an email and kind of see where he stands. I know he said that he'd let us know if there was anything that he could put in or have room for, but I will reach out to him again this week and find out if it's something maybe he can do for us.
Okay.
Can we do a letter to the editor? Do it ourselves?
I don't see why not.
Do we want to
Okay.
see how
Yeah.
responsive they are first?
Sure.
I'll find out and then I'll let you know what he says about that, and then we can go with your recommendation maybe if this doesn't work out.
Okay.
I'm also gonna reach out to the Council on Aging. She was on vacation for a couple days. I have to reach out to her, probably email her tonight or tomorrow, find out what's a good date. If Denise, you're around, I'll get some dates from her, and maybe me and you can go down there and speak to the Council on Aging about the survey. I'm just trying to she was on vacation for the last couple, probably a week and a half, so just trying to get some days on what's the best, and the amount of people that are gonna be there for us to actually speak to.
Okay.
She said something about maybe about bingo was their busiest time, so maybe head down there for that. But I'll get some dates and times, and I'll email you and let you know.
Okay.
Have you been collecting any surveys?
I haven't gone down there because she was on vacation. So when I meet with her, when I email her, and I get a date, I'll go down and make sure we have all the surveys so I can bring them to the next meeting.
All right. The one outside the town's clerk's office, every time I've gone, there's been one. So I have 3 now, one which I haven't opened, one of which was mailed. They mailed it to the town clerk, and Lucia put it in the envelope, so whatever works. But I will scan the 2 additional ones that I got and put them on Dropbox, so you can see them as well.
So I put the results in Dropbox probably a week or
Yes.
so ago. I have not put the most recent ones in, but I skimmed through them. The trend is consistent with what we heard last time I did our readout. There's nothing significantly new, a lot of similar kind of comments.
Okay.
What about, are we allowed to make them available at the town meeting? Or is there some legality about that?
We could probably do a handout, because one of them, the town, I think it was the town common reconfiguration, they put out a handout. That's actually not a bad idea, and they just left them at the desk so people could, I don't know about this, if we want to leave specifically the surveys, or if we want to put a flyer out there telling them that the survey is available.
We
Thoughts?
put up a sign with one of those QR codes. Just tell people can just go up and scan it.
Okay.
Have one of us stand
Have you
there.
seen who comes to town meeting?
But I'm just saying, the next line I was gonna say was one of us can stand there, right? Because rather than, same thing with the phone, right? You'd have to sit there and type in the address that you
Yeah.
get, right? That's, I'd argue, just as complicated, whereas if we're there and have a sign that says, we want your feedback, right? Some better worded version of that. Take a picture of this, and we can help people if necessary.
I don't know what that means.
Even if we,
I don't know if we could do that inside.
Do you know how to create a QR code?
Yeah,
It's town business.
Takes like
it's
10
not
seconds.
Political.
Okay.
That's true.
So,
I'd almost do both, too. I would just
Yeah,
have the papers
I agree.
available for people, and
Sure.
even, you know what, even pens and pencils, right there. If someone wants to fill it out right there, I mean,
have a box ready for them to drop
we're
in.
there.
Yeah.
Even if they drop it on the way
Have
out.
a table. I mean, I don't, like I
agree.
said, I don't know if there's any legality about it, but, I mean, if we were just there, here are surveys, have you had a chance to fill them out here while you're sitting?
So I follow-
Minutes and
if
do
it's
it?
town business, I don't see why there would be a problem.
Okay.
It's not, it's apolitical.
She said
Yeah.
89.
So,
But it has a-
All right, I will talk to Lucia.
I
The,
thought that way.
yeah, the, what do you call it,
Warrant?
no, I've lost my train of thought. The piece that Norton Media Center made for us to go on the bulletin. That's just a JPEG. We could just simply leave those out as handouts, and not have to get into any design. So I'll make a note and I'll run off copy. I'll make sure it's okay with Lucia. should we ask, I mean, we're not going to really have anything, I don't want to get into the expense of having to put together like a, poster board thing with the QR code.
I think those are easy enough to just print out on computer paper.
Yeah.
Right, and just say.
So do that-
If you want to take that now, you could just.
Do you want me to send you the JPEG and you can put the QR code directly on that?
Sure.
Okay. That'll work. And then we'll kill two birds with one stone. We'll have it in two. They can either plug it in if they have it, or,
The QR code will direct them straight to the survey.
Yeah, so you point your phone at it and it'll open it up in the browser automatically. And as we were sitting here, I generated one.
You don't even need an app anymore.
Nope.
No, it's
Oh, I
just
thought
the
you
camera.
did.
No, you don't even need an app anymore.
Just
Well,
your-
most phones, you just literally take
Yeah.
your camera.
the picture, the
Yeah.
camera? Really?
I know for, at least for an iPhone, if you point it at a QR code, it recognizes what it is and says, do you want to open this webpage?
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, I'm gonna send the
You want on
JPEG. I'm gonna check with Lucy to make sure it's okay first, just to okay it. And then I'll send you the JPEG and you can put the QR code on it, if you have access to a printer.
Sure.
Print them. If not, send it back to me and I'll use my company's toner and paper. Okay. That's a good plan. All right. Where are we? Survey, we did the update. Watertown, their charter. Okay. Watertown has a town council form of government. This is the first town council form charter that we've read. It consists of 9 town councilors, 4 at large, 4 by district, 1 specifically elected to be the president, and the president also sits on the school committee. They've had town council since 2011. Population is 915, with registered voters.
3,000?
31,915, sorry, it's gotta be, yeah, 9 o'clock. My brain just shuts off at 9 o'clock, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say.
31,915, registered voters is 23,427.
It's a pretty high number.
It is, yeah. Although percentage-wise, and again, the numbers are kind of skewed because the population data is 10 years old, whereas the registration data is current. But in terms of overall percent, it's under 74%, so it's not one of the higher, no. Some of the higher ones were in the 79, 80% range. But overall, not bad. The one thing
Got this on my phone. Clever.
Great. All right, going through their charter. Is there anything anybody wanted to bring up? The only thing that struck me is it was odd in that there is no mention of any of the land use. There's no conservation, there's no ZBA, there's no planning board. No mention of Parks and Recs, no mention of Council on Aging. It was strange, although there was still a ton of information in here, and it took a while to read. I was kind of surprised that it doesn't address as much as it did.
But it seemed to leave it up to the town council.
Yeah.
At the end with the temporary administrative code. It identifies which town officers the town manager shall appoint as the government is getting put together, and then any other department heads or deputy town managers as may be authorized by the town council, so. That certainly gives the town council and the town manager some leeway
Yeah.
to respond to what it is the town actually needs without having to change the charter first.
Right.
Which could be a good thing. I don't know how they transitioned, obviously they had different departments before they switched to town council. I think they had a select board before that. So I'd be curious to see sort of how, if they kept those departments in the interim or. Oh,
Yeah.
they say that in the beginning of Article 9. So they just continued everything that was already there.
But were they previously addressed in some manner?
In their previous charter?
Yeah.
Possibly, but, unless you fear in the future the town council or whoever the legislative body is going to get rid of something that you want in perpetuity, do you need to incorporate it into a charter? It's just harder to change a charter, so,
Yeah.
Depending on how responsive you want your government to be, it might make sense to not be so specific about the different departments within the charter.
And you think, where would they be specified, in their bylaws?
So they clearly had a charter and bylaws before they switched in 2011.
Yep.
So, so if you could find those from before 2011, you might, maybe they had it in the charter, maybe they didn't, I'm not sure. But anyway, it's something to think about, how specific you want to get
Yeah.
versus how much you want to sort of just let the town council do what they think is best for the town as it comes up.
All right. Why don't we start from the beginning and just go through and see if there's anything anybody.
That's an interesting section, though.
Yeah, it is.
Which I actually skipped, because I was like, oh, it was way at the end by then, I think. But it turns out it's actually pretty important.
The last one we read that was like that too.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying. I'm not sure I fully understand the wording here. I understand more
Yeah.
of what you're saying. I don't know if you're explaining that or if you're having trouble piecing it together as well. It just seems like it's saying this continuation, but where is it?
So the continuation was in existence right before this was adopted,
Uh-huh.
basically. Whether it's online, I don't know, but they had a government, I'm pretty sure they had a select board before, in prior years. So they changed the form of government to town council, but then, according to this section, they didn't get rid of, adopting this charter didn't get rid of any town agencies or departments. They maintained it as it had been, but within this charter said, you, town council and town manager, have the authority to reorganize. So in here, when they describe the town manager position, they say, he or she can come up with a reorganization plan for the departments and agencies and submit it to the town council.
All right.
So sort of as a temporary measure, let's just keep everything the same, but now this new town council
Yeah.
has the authority to change it
Yeah.
if they want to.
So everything the same, though, seems like it almost becomes precedent, and the town council can change it should they want to.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Thanks for explaining that to me,
Sure.
because I was a little, you're right, maybe it was by the time I got to 9, but
Yeah. I didn't think it was that important.
Anything that's not important, they put towards the end.
they
I
put the
hope you
most
don't read it.
important, they put the most important in the back.
Yeah. It's like the financials. You read the footnotes to get all the good stuff, yeah.
You read the first page to the last page, and a few in the middle.
All right.
So I think Article 1 is sort of pro forma, like
Yeah.
just reciting.
We're laughing at the community day.
I'm sitting here, I'm looking for the old charter.
I
But
gotta
I
get
thought
used
it
to the word ordinance.
Oh, yeah, that's city.
Yeah.
That's city for bylaw.
Oh, thank you. I don't know about that. Yeah, I was confused with that too.
In Massachusetts, anyway.
Article 2,
So I thought it was very interesting that the council president was elected sort of separately and to both council president and the school committee.
yeah.
Given what we've heard about the strife between, school and non-school departments in town, I wonder if that's sort of a way to make sure everybody's on the same page and, the school department is, clearly a part of the non-school town government. Anyway, I did think that was interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I can definitely understand it, but by the same token, I was putting a lot of responsibility on one person.
Yeah.
But they're running for that position, so they know what they're getting into.
Yeah. Yeah. By the same token, a lot of people may not run if they have to take.
Do both.
Yeah. The one thing I noticed about this charter in general is it seems to be the first one where it gives any sort of authority within terms of referendum, reversing decisions specifically of the school committee, whereas I don't think they've seemed to, in most prior towns' charters, the school committee is sort of autonomous and they run themselves, and there's, no real recourse if, you have an issue with a decision or a rule they make. Whereas this, the town council votes on, it seems to have some control over, the replacement of vacancies, as well as giving the constituents the ability to call for a referendum of school committee items specifically, which I found different. Within section 2, there was one thing that jumped out at me, and I didn't know if this was common, I'm not sure I've ever lived in a town that had a town council form. Well, I grew up in Brockton, and that was a city council, but I wasn't really into politics back as a teenager, so. 2.2-8A, no ordinance shall be passed finally on the date it is introduced. Which struck me as, except in the case of a special emergency where it goes on to state, but I found it interesting that you can't bring up let's call it a measure, an article, to vote on and actually vote on it in the same day that it is raised in the meeting. It looks like it has to be deferred. The vote has to be deferred to a follow-up meeting.
I noticed that too, I think, and it's probably good for transparency purposes.
You can't surprise anybody.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point.
Because you actually have to, if I read it correctly, because you actually have to publish it correctly in the local newspaper.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's not
Yeah.
law. I actually have that, is this the law? Because that's
Is what the law?
having to publish every proposed ordinance, appropriation order, or loan authorization shall be published once in the local newspaper, at least 5 days before its final passage, and then the passage then has to be posted.
Right.
But is that for an ordinance, for like a bylaw? Is that why they're asking for you to do so much before you go and vote on it?
So I don't know, so you're wondering if it's like state law that you have to publish?
Well, I mean, if you're gonna
it?
go and change a bylaw, I mean, I guess they put the emergency clause in there in case it's for health and safety, but
Yes.
if you're gonna go change a bylaw that's been written for years and you're just gonna introduce it in one meeting, that's why they're asking you to, give some notice and at
Yeah.
least put it in the paper. I don't
Yeah.
think they're asking you to do it with every single, per se, vote or item that comes up in the meeting.
Yeah, was every proposed ordinance appropriation order? a loan authorization.
Yeah, that's
Pretty.
very substantial. Yeah.
Yeah, seems totally overbearing. I mean, it seems way over the top personally.
Yeah. Well, that was one thing I had in there. Is that a law?
Yeah.
Do we have to do that? Carrie, would you know, so it makes reference to keeping ordinances, which are bylaws. So do our bylaws then just simply become ordinances, known as ordinances?
So, yeah, I mean, what they declare in section 1 is that they have a town council form of government, but if there's a state law that distinguishes between towns and cities, they want to be known as a city. They want to be treated like a city. And so just in Massachusetts, cities have ordinances as their local laws, towns call them bylaws.
Okay. All right, so if we went and looked up Watertown, we would, instead of finding bylaws, we would find ordinances. Okay.
Yeah. I think it's a distinction
And that may
without any
be
real
where,
difference.
yeah, and that may be where some of the information regarding boards might be?
Oh, I would imagine so, yeah.
Okay.
I would imagine that once they got through this transition period,
Yeah.
everything was sort of put into bylaws as the town council was formed.
Okay.
Or, sorry, ordinances, after the town council was formed.
Yeah.
See?
Okay, anything else in section 2? Section 3?
I would love to know how many towns actually require their town manager to move to town and don't
Yeah.
leave it. And why,
I like this one here.
why do you have that provision
Why
if
even put
you're
it in?
always gonna waive it?
This would be them, they have to move in within 12 months, but if they'd like you, you really don't have to move.
Right. Well, and Norton's does the same thing. I think it says you have to move here, but unless we waive it.
Right.
So,
Right,
or
probably
at least
leave it.
there have been a couple of charters that are like that. And I'm
Yeah, the
like,
last
well,
one.
How many towns actually enforce that?
It just, to me, it feels like constricting. If you're looking for somebody to be employed as your town manager, and it's one of the most important positions, you know, why are you gonna, I don't know.
Yeah, you want somebody with the qualifications.
Yeah, I mean, you're more worried,
regardless
to
of
me,
whether they're
to me, it's more, you're more,
here.
exactly, you're more worried about what, you know, what they've done for work, what their abilities are, you know, what they may have for education, how they're gonna run this town. I mean, personally, I think those are way more important than the person saying, oh, I'm gonna move here within 12 months, or if you're gonna waive it anyway because the person's that great of an employee, or you're looking, you've gone out and sought them to come here, or her to come here, I think, you know, I don't understand that clause, like you said, if it's just gonna be waived every single time.
Maybe it goes to how much power the town manager has too, right? So the more power the town manager has, the more you kind of want to have a vested interest in the town, versus if they maybe have more checks and balances, maybe the vested interest is less important in my mind.
Yeah.
I just see it like, and I understand that part of it too, is why they probably put that in there. I just, if someone's established a life somewhere and they're living in another town, and now they're coming, well, we've gone out and sought them to come here because we want them. I think that's tough to ask somebody who's, you know, had their own life and whatever, to say, hey, jump over here and move. Or actually, we're just gonna waive it for you anyway, so it doesn't matter, you know?
All right, anything, I forget where we left off, Article 4?
So I just jumped back real quick, talking about the council president again.
Yep.
The council president is, so I'm in 27D. Council president shall be responsible for day-to-day supervision of the auditor and clerk of the council. That feels like and I know, I totally agree with it, they're running for it, they know what they're getting into, but the day-to-day supervision part of that, it just feels like a very
It's a job.
different, yeah,
Yeah. Right.
very different thing than anything else we've been talking about.
That's why the council
Sounds
president
almost-
makes more money than the town council
Yeah,
members.
yeah.
Yeah.
They probably, I mean, it's probably maybe it's, I don't think it's a full-time job, but
It's not, I looked it up, and council president makes $10,500 a year, while other council members make $7,500. And that's not including reimbursement for expenses.
Gotcha. But you're expected to be at town hall on a fairly regular basis.
Day-to-day
Think,
supervision.
day-to-day.
Yeah, just-
Yeah.
Day-to-day.
Yeah. Well, every morning having a meeting, I guess.
Yeah, this sounds,
A lot of work.
Yeah.
okay. Section 5.
I liked their budget process. It starts earlier than ours, and I feel like that's been something that people have complained about in terms of transparency for the budget before the town meeting.
Yep.
So they're starting in October, no later than October of the previous year, whereas we say we need to start by the second week of February.
Yep.
And then the submission of the budget and message is, in January, whereas we're 6 weeks before town meeting. So I just liked the way they spaced that out. I think that, again, we heard a lot at the public hearing about lack of transparency and wanting more open communication, and I feel like this lends itself to better communication with the public.
Yeah, they publish it in the paper, and I like the public hearing as well. And I know that, I think we've talked about that we have a public hearing in the form of, you can attend like a FinCom meeting if you want to, but I think that's different than having a true public hearing where it's, the focus is strictly just to discuss the budget.
Yeah.
for the
Yeah,
public.
I agree. Yep.
Well, I think you would need that if, within a town council form of government, since the town is not technically voting on it.
See, I would think it would be more important, since everybody in town is voting on it, that you would want to make it as widely available as early as possible, because
Exactly.
they haven't been elected to specifically focus on this. Whereas
Right.
you have a town council, they've at least been elected and are now expected to, give this their full attention.
Right.
I wonder if that's one of the reasons why we don't start early, is 'cause you're talking, we haven't even gotten through the annual town meeting until October. I mean, we
Well,
haven't-
that's the fall time, but we're doing the budget in the spring.
What I was saying is like, sometimes we're not even cleared up with past accounts.
Oh, yeah,
Until
I know.
October, so it's tough to go and say, okay, well, we're gonna start the next year's budget, when we haven't even cleared up the first year's budget from the initial town meeting. Like, where I get with them is it's a whole different form of government, that they're not worrying about a specific date in
Right.
October, I just think it's tough to start something that you haven't even finished last year's yet, because we're always carrying something over. We always have past due bills. We always have something that we have to vote on in October.
So
But that's a problem with our,
Right, that's
we've been doing it.
I agree, but I think,
I don't think that's because we're a town
no,
meeting. I think that's
I'm
just
just-
sort of the way.
I agree. I mean, it's a
Done.
victim of circumstance, but I'm just saying is that because of the town meeting and the way the town meeting is scheduled in October, it's tough to start a budget process when we haven't even voted on what those appropriations are gonna be. So if something like this happened where it was a different form of government, it's a lot easier to start a budget process earlier like them.
I don't know if I agree with that.
I would.
I think it's a very different focus, though, right? You're going in, I mean, as we were talking about before, you're making decisions ongoing. So it's not like every decision that you want to make for this entire year has to be made now.
Right.
That's what, and
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to say, is that they.
So
they
it's
have-
kind of,
I agree with
it
meeting-
gives
they're
you
meeting
more
like every 2
flexibility.
weeks.
Yeah.
Right, it gives you a lot more flexibility to start things earlier, because you're not under these time crunches and
Yeah.
pressures.
And that's exactly what I'm saying, is like, it's tough to go in and start having, let's just say, discuss something in September for next fiscal year, when you're still worried about trying to get through a town meeting, you know what I mean, come in another month.
And it's not
That's-
just the budget, it's like a million other things that we,
Yep.
Yeah.
solar farms. and,
Articles, I mean, it's-
everything else.
And if something changes in those articles, it changes what you're gonna do for the following fiscal year. So it's hard to have something that you haven't even talked about yet or haven't voted on.
And if you miss a deadline to get on the warrant, you're screwed.
Yeah. With this, like you said, they have an ongoing, continuous, votes and/or taking things into consideration of what they're gonna do. So I think it's a little bit easier for them to plan. It's not a bad thing to have a discussion in October. You're not worried about a meeting jamming everything up.
Right, well, like James said, you can do these things like on a regular basis, you know,
Right.
they're meeting much more frequently and can, you know, address those,
Yep.
those issues.
More reactive than proactive.
It says the schedule
Proactive
of,
than reactive.
it says the schedule of town council meetings is held at a time and place fixed by ordinance. Do we know what schedule they actually meet on?
Most of them
I
are,
did not look that up.
I didn't either. Most of them
I
that
think
I've
it's
seen so
bi-weekly.
far are bi-weekly. Yeah, some of them tend to have, they would choose all of their dates a year in advance. But they were at least a couple of times a month.
And then just going back to the budget, it feels a little heavy to put it in the charter, but I like the process in 5.1 where first they set policy goals.
Right.
And then they make a budget,
Right.
right? So they say, this is what we want to do, this is what we want the community to be. Now, here's our budget of how we're gonna get to that, and if there's questions of why this over that in the funding, it's because, well, theoretically, you can go back to the goals that we all set collectively and say, because this.
Right. Right. Yeah, I don't think that's clear in our town charter.
No, I think
What
we
the role of
say,
selectmen is in this whole process, setting goals. It's a little bit clear.
right, like, I think it's mentioned in there, but it's not as clear, like, you know, it's not Board of Selectmen will set the goals and then tell the town manager how to, you know, structure the budget.
Get there, right.
You know, and again, with the capital outlay program in 5.5, you know, we require it a week before the budget is submitted, and they're giving them 3 months to sort of incorporate that. Anyway, it's very detailed for a budget process, but just given the feedback that we've heard, I just really liked the way this was laid out.
I agree with you. No, I did too.
Yeah. Anything else within 5? Article 6? Anything in 7? All right, I have a question. Did anybody understand the difference between a citizen petition and a citizen initiative? And is it just that a petition is a precursor to an initiative?
I interpreted that a petition is just, we're gonna present this before the town council. We want them
Well,
to consider the petition.
Yeah, what-
Because, you know, we're 150 angry voters. And
Yeah.
Like, what you did.
The-
And, you know,
They're-
here's our petition.
they both call for 150 votes, and they both state which seeks the passage of a measure. Now, the petition says concerning matters other than what's under 811C, whereas the initiative shall contain a request for the passage of a particular measure. And it regulates, well, it states in the form that it needs to be, whereas the petition doesn't need to be in any specific form. I couldn't quite follow what the difference is and what one did over the other, but the initiative is clearly the stronger of the two.
Right. It says the filing of initiative petition with the town clerk, but in this case, if it's an initiative, though, it needs, the way I read it at least, requires at least 10% of the total number of voters who've signed, not 150.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
I mean, it's kind of funny, the wording they use, because they use the same term, initiative.
Yeah.
Petition, but
Right, so the initiative, you're voting, the town's voting on it, right? The petitions, you're just saying, you're just asking the town council to go back and revote.
Yeah.
And reconsider,
That's exactly what it looks
right?
like. Yeah.
So the petition is it's not a referendum, it's just a request to revote?
Yeah, it's constrained to the council or the school committee.
Right, and it says they can take action within 3 months.
Right.
That they, as may be appropriate.
But then the citizen initiative is taking it out of their hands and putting it
Right.
putting it on the ballot.
So if there is no action taken on their part, then the citizens put forth an initiative measure.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm reading
So
the
it is a
second part-
precursor then?
Yeah, because I guess I'm reading the second part as, if no action is taken, it is still the responsibility of the council or school committee, whichever may be the appropriate committee, to then pass it on to the clerk.
Yeah, I don't think it
If I'm
has to be a
reading that
precursor
correctly.
as a, I mean, it could end there, right? It could. You're
It
just-
could
you're-
what?
It could end there, like you're just asking them to reconsider their vote or.
But do you have to do a citizen petition
I think
in
there's-
order
I
to
think
do an
they're two
initiative?
separate things. It's.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I
they're
think if
just-
they don't, if they do so, that it ends right there, right?
Right.
But if they
I mean,
don't,
it's an easier way of getting, you know, if you think they might want to reconsider, they might be willing to reconsider, then you do the.
So if you're not satisfied with the response under the petition,
Yeah,
you
'cause
could
it
go the
says-
formal initiative?
It says they have to take action within 3 months.
right.
But they could reject it.
Sure, that could be the
Correct.
action. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it starts on the, as far as the 100 and, citizen initiative, it says section A, commencement. So to me, that's the first step. I don't think the petition leads into
Yeah.
initiative. It could, but I don't think that's,
And it doesn't necessarily say that it needs to be the precursor.
right, it could,
Right.
because
Yeah.
they may not, you still may not be happy with the
Right.
result.
Right.
Which I guess is a big change from like how you think about how Norton operates. I mean, if you're upset with something that the selectmen voted on, you can just show up, right? Like you get it on the agenda and you can go there and state your case.
Well, I would think you could too, but they wouldn't have to act on it, right? They wouldn't have to, they can just blow you off and ignore you.
This is a more formal
Well,
process.
Right?
Little more
I mean,
formal.
in this
Right.
form, but the petition then makes it more formal and says, now they have to at least listen to you and then respond.
Right.
Yeah, the only thing you see is just one.
It's almost like a motion for reconsideration.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
And you're right, they can say yes or they can say no, but they have to say something.
yeah.
Right, right. But you're saying you could still, that individual could probably still go and say his piece.
Right, and, or go, you know, with
Yeah.
a bunch of people and they
Right,
could just say thanks, goodbye.
But now you've
And
got
not revote on it.
149 friends to come back with you.
Right.
To say, no, I really meant it.
And then if that doesn't work, you can find 2,200
Right.
additional friends.
A lot of them, yeah. And then if that gets rejected, you gotta find 10% more.
Yeah.
And then my reading was it's 10% of additional voters, so you can't have the same voters. for this
Yeah.
specific-
On top of.
Yeah. I was like,
Oh,
what
I
is-
didn't,
what a hurdle.
I didn't pick
But
up
I
on
don't know if that's 10% of the eligible voters or the actual voters, right?
Eligible,
32.
registered.
Doesn't say registered though.
I thought I read additional.
If you look at the definition of voter, I think it was,
I looked at a section.
some voters, the word voter shall mean registered voters of the town of Watertown.
Yeah. And then in the section D, it says the supplemental initiative petition shall be signed by a number of additional voters.
Yeah.
So I read that to mean
Another 5% on top of it, yeah.
Okay.
10%.
And that gets you a special election.
I think it says 5. Oh, no, no, it's not.
5, you're right.
And then 20% have to show up to the special election or nothing happens. You need a lot of friends to get
Yeah.
something reversed here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lot of friends.
Yeah. And that's one thing I guess I'm curious when we have town council, and, you know, and get their opinion, like, what, you know, what the thought process behind those kind of things is.
Yeah. Should it be that high of a benchmark? Like, is it that high for a reason?
Or
Like,
what the majority is of people with town council, you know, what do most go with the benchmark?
Yeah.
well, even recall. Like, I started tracking because they're all over the place. Some of them are 5%, some of them are 20%. The timelines are even the more ridiculous. I mean, in some cases, it gives them, 10 business days or,
Yeah, I think some say 10 days. I think.
yeah,
You know,
it's impossible.
what a
You can't
weekend.
get it done.
Yeah, right.
I think it has to be like a even balance. I mean, I think you have to give people the avenue. You can't make it impossible for them.
Yeah.
But on the same token, you just can't make it so, fast and quick.
Oh,
that it
hey, it's
just happens at the
Tuesday.
time.
Never get
No,
anything
Yeah,
done.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
totally agree with that, but I think I'd like to know, like, from a attorney perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
What's the rationale? I do too.
Before I figure out what balance.
I think it protects the voters and it gives them the avenue to do it. I just don't think you can make it so it's, every time they take a vote on something, people are saying, well, it's an easy process for me to
Yeah.
Right.
reconsider it every single time. When it's something
Right.
important and people are adamant about it, I think finding a bunch of signatures isn't a big deal if it's that much of an uproar.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
got to be a high enough bar that it's work, but not too prohibitive that it can't get done.
Yeah, and that's where I think the attorneys come in, just look at, give us that
Yeah.
guidance on what is balanced, if you will.
And I think I think you gotta take into consideration what we have for numbers. I mean, that comes into it. I mean, when you're talking 10% of our voters or 10% of another city's, that's two different, trying to get 10% of our voters is a lot different than trying to get 10% of,
Yeah.
Yeah.
especially in
Like
a city.
Cambridge.
If you get, you get a close-knit city when there's people at multiple functions that you can easily get signatures from. It's a little bit different trying to get signatures from, a rural town that's
Yeah.
spread out,
Yeah, well, that's very true. Like in a town particularly, one, it's more difficult because you walk.
Yeah, if you're gonna go to the heart of a city and walk around, you're gonna see, a lot easier to see multiple people that you can get signatures from than trying to go to,
Yeah. I know personally, I don't like the idea. of-
Over and
Yeah.
over, door to door.
Must be what are you gonna do? You're gonna go to spread out neighborhoods with acre lots, or you're gonna go to the city where you can, go to an apartment complex and get,
Yeah.
possibly 2,000 voters.
Well, you just wonder about all this kind of stuff, because in today's world, like, people do not answer doors.
No.
You know what I mean? They don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I walked down
You know,
the street that was next to mine. I mean, people that I see and wave to every day would not open the door to me.
Yeah, so it's, a lot of this to me sometimes seems sort of antiquated in a certain way.
Yeah.
It really does. But that's why I struggle when you talk about balanced, like, it's balanced.
Yeah.
I'd also be curious.
Practical.
I'd also be curious, like when you're talking to Lauren about what the benchmarks are for these towns that have these high hurdles. Do they ever reach them? Does anybody ever,
Yeah.
pass
Right.
able to meet that benchmark?
It'd be nice to get,
Because you can throw any numbers you want in the charter, right? But which towns actually are successful in getting that
Right.
done?
Right.
it'd be nice to see like what the benchmarks are for somebody that's a town or city, that's very comparable to us for vote numbers and for population. Because if we're gonna judge a benchmark on that, that's kind of what, I'd be interested to see what they use. Because, I mean, for us, there's no point of using something that doesn't compare to us.
I found it interesting that at almost near the very end of all of this, you get to 7-Eleven, where it tells you, you have all of these provisions available to you, but they're not applicable to this massive list, either within the initiative or the referendum, which I'm sure for good reason. That's another thing I would like to find out, because some towns, there was one that I looked at, you could only reverse town expenditures. The next one said you couldn't call for a referendum on town expenditures. It'd be very interested to find out.
Oh, can you imagine
ration-
how terrible that would be for anybody we did business with?
Yeah.
Anybody we had a contract with, if a couple of voters could put a stop to the payment?
Yeah. So you can't call for a referendum on a measure that's been recalled by referendum. So that's helpful.
Yeah. Well, one thing to keep in mind too is, so selectmen in the town of Norton, I think, 4-year terms?
3.
3-year terms.
Oh, here, you mean, yeah.
Yeah, so they, like, for example, they're two. Yeah.
Well, they only have elections every other year. Did you see that?
That's what the way most town councils seem to work. To turn
2 years.
over, and they turn over every 2 years.
Yeah.
It's not
Everybody
staggered.
in the same shop.
I mean, and the nice part about that is you're not ever really running head to head with an incumbent, right? You have 9 spots, you have 12 people running, a mixture of incumbents or new people, and you're never going head to head with somebody that's.
Right.
Well, I guess I was kind of thinking, if you think about the initiatives and petitions, if you can vote somebody out every 2 years, actually all of them, you know, I mean, that kind of, so if you don't like something, it's not too far off, probably.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah,
throw them
right.
out.
I think it's,
No, that's a
You
good
know.
point.
I think it's easy to see what their voting record is. I mean, you're gonna know what they're voting on.
Right.
If they're council at large, or if they're done by precinct, you at least know, if they do it by precinct, you at least know who represents you. You can go and find out what they voted on.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, well, vote them out, or at least get a lot of your friends to help vote them out, you know?
Yeah.
If they're councilor at large, you're gonna see everybody across the board, and you can kinda, you know, meander your way with who you want to be there.
Yeah, I guess I just feel more comfortable with higher hurdles if I get to throw somebody out at a quicker turnover. You know?
That makes sense.
I just think
Have I
with
just
this,
not been able to find it, or is there not a recall?
There's no recall provision in this at all, no. I looked.
Sitting, flipping through
Yeah, no,
over and over.
there isn't one.
Yep. Which maybe is okay, because it's a 2-year.
It's only 2 years.
Well, they're 2 years for the town council,
Yeah.
but you saw some of the other ones and they sit for 4.
That's true.
So I'm thinking, yeah, maybe it's in the ordinances.
I just think with something like this, with the 2-year, being able to get voted out, wherever you vote, there's no hiding. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
you're gonna
every vote's
go.
pretty fresh.
Yeah, you're gonna go, you're gonna vote on things that people are gonna know what you're voting on. You know, you're not gonna be able to turn around and go, oh, well, you know, I was gonna vote like this, but this changed it anyway, or, you know, I'm gonna, you know, stay out of this because we're gonna table it, you know, over and over again for weeks on end. You know what I mean? I think if the people want the information, they can either go to these meetings or at minimal, go into the minutes and say, this is how everybody felt on these certain things. You at least have the ability to see it and vote the way you feel, you know?
Yeah.
Well, we do now too, but we don't always do.
I agree, but there's also, with us, there's a lot of avenues to hide behind when you actually think of who's supporting what. You know what I mean? It's tough to find out exactly those clear-cut avenues. And I think with this, you know, unless you got a reason to abstain or, you know, not vote on it, you're at least gonna see each thing. And then every 2 years, if, you know, like David was saying, you don't like it,
Vote them out.
exactly.
See ya.
I kind of like the short terms.
Yeah.
The other thing I found interesting was in 712, the town council may decide to take a specific measure to a town vote regardless. Looks like it's at their discretion. So if they feel that there's something that could be a little bit more controversial, it's a way of preventing. I wonder if you can't call for a referendum on it. It is ineligible under 711, number 9.
I think that helps them with large decisions that
Yeah,
they don't wanna put on.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see what you're saying. So you gotta vote.
yeah. So you can't, we're going to leave it up to you, and you can't call for a referendum on it once
Right.
we've done it.
Right, that's what,
Yep,
you got a job.
yep.
Yeah.
Well, I think that takes away some of the thing of, you taking away my vote on certain, you know, big items. They can say, here you go, you know?
Yeah.
All right. We still have a few more things to do, so let's just push on. Anything within general provisions? Article 9, which I'm going to go back and read again.
That's what we started with.
Read more fully. All right.
It
The,
basically answers the first question I had for Lauren. How you address transition. This was probably the best written
Okay.
section that we've seen.
We really haven't seen it anywhere else, have we?
I feel like we've seen it at least one other time, but it wasn't as deep, it wasn't
Yeah.
laid out. Like, this is just really laid out very easy.
There were a
to
couple
read.
that we saw that had gone to representative town meeting that had a transitional provision within it, but it wasn't very detailed, no. Okay.
I like how it read overall.
Yeah.
You know, whether you liked it or not. but the
Yeah, I mean, it's a
underlying,
charter, so it's
Right.
dry, but it was well organized,
Yeah.
yeah.
Next one up is gonna be Amherst. Sandy's handed that out already. I did not make a printout, sorry, of the local fall town meeting schedule. But I did put that on Dropbox. I tried to find a mix of local, within driving distance, reasonable driving distance, of representative town meeting and town council forms of government that are coming up this fall. I think it might be a good idea if we try and, everybody individually tries to get to at least one of them, just so we can see what they look like in action, to inform our decisions better. The first one coming up is Holbrook, which is on Wednesday. I made a note in the spreadsheet where it says it's advertised as a special town meeting. I would make a note to check the warrant and just make sure it's not specifically a special town meeting for a particular item. It seems like some of the smaller towns specifically refer to the fall one as a special town meeting, so that if there's not enough on it, they don't have to have it. It's not defined within their charters that they have a specific fall town meeting, only the spring one is announced. But I would recommend, I did send out the warrant for the Holbrook one just because it's in 2 days. I may not be doing the same for the following one, so if there's a town you wanted to look at, I recommend checking the date and time and that it's still on schedule, and please don't go by mine and yell at me if it's been canceled. But the town council forms of government, they are meeting, Taunton meets every Tuesday. Bridgewater's the second Tuesday of every month, and then Franklin, Randolph, and Attleboro had their specific schedules available, and there's a link directly to them within that spreadsheet on Dropbox. So, and that covers us through, that goes all the way through, the last one looks like it's in January, beginning of January of next year in Milton.
The other thing I was just gonna suggest about this too is even if maybe we can't get to them, I know some of these towns and cities have great websites and like almost instantaneously posted the video of it in full. I mean, so I understand driving, like for me, driving's gonna be an issue for some of the, especially with my kids, but for me to maybe sit down at night and watch one on video, I mean, I foresee that being the same exact thing as going and sitting in one of these gymnasiums or whatever. I know like Franklin, I know their website was pretty impressive, you know what I mean, things are uploaded pretty quick.
And Laura, you said that is in Dropbox?
I put it in Dropbox, yeah, a couple weeks ago. I was gonna hold it until tonight, until I saw the meeting of the Holbrook date, which is, I didn't want to give everybody just 2 days' notice if they wanted to go to that one. But they had like 12 articles on the warrant. It wasn't too onerous. It looked like it was a nice mix of things that it wouldn't take up a hell of a lot of time. All right, moving on, review of the Charter Commission timeline. Sandy put that in your packet. I bumped out, based on what we've done and where we're sort of heading, I bumped it out with quite a few more items within here. The ones in yellow are the ones that I was thinking we should probably discuss in some measure whether or not, we feel well, in some cases, we need to include timelines, and in some cases, we need to tweak them a bit or firm them up. Didn't know if we had an idea of how long we wanted to keep the survey out and available, and
I would suggest closing it when we're done with our interviews. Like,
Okay.
It's our input collection phase, and so whenever we finish here, we shut that down
Okay.
and bring it all in.
everybody's in agreement?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So I had in there as a whole date of 12/31, which will probably coincide pretty closely with it, but we can formalize that more officially. We can also do kind of a last-minute push in another month and just say, you know, closing soon. Everything must go. Let's see, the meetings with the town stakeholders, I bumped that out to show the different branches. So we're done with the executive and administrative branches. Department heads, we're actually going to be done with fairly soon, although I just noticed we had somebody pop up in the, I might have to bump out the dates. Looks like we had somebody, the new fire chief.
And then,
So we'll move that date out, but it's mostly complete. When we're heading into, starting with the boards and commissions and committees, starting tonight. Line 32, we just talked about, attend other forms of government. So I've got that starting with the first meeting and going through the last meeting that I had pulled up a date for. Get that done. We've got the lines 33 and 34. Those are action items for this week. Line 35, we may want to move that further down. This was inviting people for specific lines of questioning. If we got into our discussions and had questions about, how things were organized, or if one way was better than another, if we had specific people of specific types of government, or even, folks within the administration that we wanted to meet with. So we may want to move that down a bit. So if we shut the survey off at the end of December, we can kind of compile and organize the survey information during the month of January, kind of analyze that within our meetings. And then, based on that and all of our reading and interviewing, start to get into some discussions of proposed recommendations. I was thinking that would run through first quarter of next year. And again, we may, based on whatever discussions we're having, want to follow up with people that we may have already met with and get some more guidance tailored to the specific recommendations that we're thinking about. And then start working on our draft preliminary report in the second quarter. And then I think everything else was the same after that. So the preliminary report would go to Lauren for review, and we've given her substantial amount of time. I've got line 41, voting on the preliminary report. Viewing that as more of a formality. I'm hoping if we get to that point, we've already voted on all of the material issues and have drafted the recommendation based on that.
And just a point, Lauren did say we could give her portions at a time so that, she's not doing it all at once.
Yes.
So once we've decided something.
Yep. And then the rest is guided specifically by the regs, with a few exceptions here and there. But most of that is going to be set specifically by the regs and when we have to do things, and that's noted within the comments. And anything that had a firm or hard deadline is coded in there as well. Is everybody comfortable with this?
I am. I'm more comfortable now that I've seen it again, because I wasn't sure.
Okay.
So, maybe-
Anything, are we comfortable with the specific task items as well as the timeline? Anything anybody wanted to adjust?
So I think it all makes sense. Line 37, the discussion of proposed recommendations feels like the one that can go from this to this real fast.
Yeah.
And so we would have plenty of time to do this, but I'd love to see us in some meeting or meetings leading up to that, establish the process by which we're going to have those discussions. Right?
Okay.
Do we want to start with the biggest picture items and whittle it down? Do we want to pick a couple? Do we want to, everybody put something that they want to discuss in a spreadsheet and we can pick up? I don't know what the right way to do it is, but it
Yeah.
feels like if we have an agreed upon process, then that'll
That actually
go
might be a good
much
question
smoother.
for the likes of the Lauren.
Yeah, or the MMA folks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think it would be good to start, like, to prioritize too, because if we do run out of time, right?
Yeah.
If we end up getting sort of bogged down, what are the most important things we really want to look
Yep.
at?
Yep.
And maybe some of the finer details, if we don't get to those,
Yeah.
or, it's not as
Put it in a
big of an
bylaw.
issue, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, well, this is, it's not hard-coded. You can go out and look at it at any point. We can make changes to it as needed. Add, subtract.
The key date is August 23rd.
It is. Yeah, that's an important one.
I guess at that point, we probably don't meet all that often.
No, I would expect, it would be on an as-needed basis once, we hear back from the Attorney General, and
Right.
obviously, we've got some, where is it, line 58? The work, the work itself is done, but the getting it out and
But yet the work has only just begun.
Oh, yeah, the selling.
the beatings shall begin.
Yeah, the selling is just as important. That's for sure.
I recommend shutting off your Facebook page at that point. So. Okay. So I think we're okay. Everybody's all set with this? All right. Timeline, do we have any other business? Our next meeting is September 23rd. We're reviewing Amherst. What are our action items for the next meeting?
I was gonna follow up with MMA to choose a date for them coming in, or
Yep.
to give them the options. I have Janie's reaching out to Chris about door alerts, right? Kevin's gonna reach out to Sun Chronicle. Dave's gonna do his QR code thing.
And you're gonna send me
And
something.
Lucia's gonna-
Yeah, I'm gonna check with the town clerk and make sure the handout's okay at town meeting. Once I get that, I'll send you the JPEG, and you can let me know if you can print it or send it
Sure.
back and I'll print it. I'm gonna get the town clerk to put the survey out there,
Okay.
and that's it.
You know, in the Amherst, for some reason it rings a bell. There's a story behind this.
What's that?
That charter.
They
the
just
Amherst
changed.
charter.
Oh, they did?
just changed.
They just, didn't they like?
They just voted, they had a charter commission 2017 or 18, I can't remember which. They just
Says
voted.
17
This is
on the
data
Okay,
center, sorry.
yeah, so they just approved went from RTM to town council. And I think that wasn't their first attempt, they had tried before, and
They tried the same change before? Or
I
similar
don't,
change, I should
I
say?
think it was similar, I don't remember what if it was exactly the same, but, yeah.
Gotcha.
Just a heads up, I do have some travel coming up the next couple of weeks, so I won't be at the next 2 meetings. I'll be out of town.
Okay. Make a note.
Maybe you can remote in.
We'll see.
I don't see that happening. At least not in the next two.
We're under on that one.
Yeah.
We will assign all the tasks to Dave.
And I may get some of them done.
So what is it, 9:23 and 10:07?
Yes.
I got a note. Anything else anybody'd like to discuss? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Adjourned. Thank you all.
My stuff up before.
I'm not saying anything.